2. And Town Board, you are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 1st work session of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilman Lee.
Present.
Councilwoman Overby.
Here.
Councilwoman Rogers.
Present.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning, we'll have a public portion where any member of the public may call in and discuss any matter. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And if you're watching via TV or computer, please mute that when you get on the line to avoid feedback. We'll also be discussing a number of topics today. We have a request to amend a UR map, 17 Hawthorne. We'll have a discussion about that. Post hearing, special events discussion, Kathy Burke Gonzalez and Attorney David McMaster. Restriction of smoking on beaches near lifeguarded areas, David Lease and John Rooney. Test pilot for a change in traffic flow at the intersections of Stephen Hand's Path, Cedar Street, and Northwest Road, David Lease and Steve Lynch. Draft temporary license agreement for Carl Fisher House, David Lease, Scott Wilson. That'll be followed by liaison reports, and we do have a few resolutions to approve today. So without any further ado, Jason, I will go to you and see if we have any members of the public who are calling in to comment.
And yes, we do. I will unmute the first right now.
Thank you.
Hello, caller ending 0150. You are on the air. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes,
Thank you.
Good morning. Could you state your name, please?
I've never done this before. Okay. My name?
Yes, please.
Yes, my name is Doris Tumartine.
Morning, Doris.
How do you do? I've never done this before.
It's okay. It's always the first time.
But I care.
Well, thanks for calling in.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm very concerned about more development in a crowded Springs area. I mean, it's crazy. That's it.
Okay, is this in regard to our discussion about the 17 Hawthorne map modification?
Oh, it is.
Or just a general comment?
Yes, it is. Yes. I'm not right next to it. Close enough. It's crazy. It's crazy what developers do. I made a short film about that in 2004, and it was accepted by the Hampton Film Festival. It premiered at Guildhall. It was called Why a Duck, and it was about developers who come in and just gobble up properties and interfere with the environment, et cetera. I don't want to go into it, but I care.
We appreciate you taking the time to call us and make your comments known.
Thank you. I mean, it's a pleasure and scary being here. This is new. Thank you. Thank you for.
Well, thanks for participating in our democracy.
Yeah, I'm all for democracy. While we
Be
have
well.
Yes.
Be well, Doris. We appreciate it.
Thank
Doris,
you.
you did great. We'll be on to the next caller. And caller ending 8310, you are on the air. Hello. Caller ending in 8310. I just heard a thump on your side of the line. Are you still there? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next caller and circle back. Okay. Hello, caller ending 3733. You're on the air. Hello.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear. Please state your name for the board, please.
Hi, my name's Corey Sinise. I'm an owner and surf instructor for Corey's Wave Professional Surf Instruction.
Hi, Corey. Good morning.
Well, first of Hey, good morning. I've never done this before either, so this is the first time for everything. I'd like to thank you guys for your, obviously, service and especially your time. During COVID, probably had its challenges, and I'm sure you guys have had your hands full. I don't want to waste too much time telling you guys, I live in Montauk. I've been coming there for every year of my life. My parents, my grandparents live there. I own a home there now, and I'm starting a family. I have a 2-year-old. Needless to say, I pay taxes, vote here. I just want to quickly address the new permit conditions for the surf instruction laid out by the Special Events Committee. I'll definitely follow up with an email because I know 3 minutes isn't very much time, but I'm just going to go through it really quickly. I know the committee meant well, but it does restrict our ability as a young locally owned business to do well in an already challenging environment. But more importantly, the new conditions really have a negative effect on, I'd say, the local community as a whole, especially kids. That's really where my main concern is. The first two conditions are hours of operation, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then the dates of operation, May 1st through October 30th. These are very limiting hours, and it immediately makes it so we can't do our after-school program that we've been doing for many years. We stopped doing it during COVID, but we can't do an after-school program for kids any longer because of these restrictions. I mean, we have to stop at 3 p.m., which is very early. It's a 6-hour workday. Most adults work 9 to 5, and they can no longer really take surf lessons anymore just due to our restrictions. I'm pretty sure the committee's received numerous letters citing these problems and citing the problems with the new conditions, and nothing's really changed. If the biggest issue is overcrowding, then why not allow us to utilize those early morning and late afternoon hours and the colder months of the year, of course. Moving on anyway, so one-on-one instruction only with no camps, that's fine. Absolutely agree with one-on-one instruction, and beginner lessons should be one-on-one. Next is 10 people total, which is very limiting to us, but reasonable. Moving on, can only operate at ditch planes. This is, I feel, counterproductive because considering the conclusions that the town has already come to regarding overcrowding of ditch planes, and then they say we can only do it at ditch planes, which is, I know that it's the best place, but obviously we'd like to be able to try to go somewhere else if it was okay. All right, moving on. So surf instructors must be CPR and first aid certified. Absolutely agree. We've had every instructor that worked for us CPR and first aid certified since 2008 when we started. The next item is one person must be lifeguard certified. Absolutely agree. We had 9 certified lifeguards working for us last year, including myself. Perhaps having lifeguards can be directly correlated to how many people we're allowed to have, a head count. For example, if we have 5 lifeguards, we should be able to have 5 students. Next item, a sign-in sheet must be available by request by Marine Patrol. Absolutely, perfect. And then the last item is students and instructors must wear identifiable bright color rash guards. Absolutely. But not really in a COVID atmosphere. We had a lot of problems having people want to put on a wet rash guard that somebody else was already wearing. And we can't it's hard to just say, oh, you have to wear it. The town will come down on us if we don't wear this. And also a lot of people just in general, the whole time we've been trying to keep a very low, commercial footprint down there, and then all of a sudden the town wants us to wear rash guards, and it just looks very bad. It just, it always has. Anyways, thank you guys for time. I know the town takes these things seriously. Safety of the community, promoting young local business, and obviously treating everyone fairly. So thank you guys for your time. Obviously, feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Corey, thanks for taking the time to call in and let us know your opinion. Appreciate that.
All right, on to the next caller. Hello, caller ending 8046. You are on the air. Hello.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Steiner, and I'm calling regarding 17 Hawthorne, the Map Modifications. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and special thanks to Peter, Kathy, and Kate for acknowledging receipt of the letters I collected from the adjacent neighbors and surrounding property owners. All of them are opposed to the proposed modification. We all appreciate your time and attention to this. Please do not allow this land to be used for construction of an oversized house on an undersized lot, adjacent to properties bought for open space, meaning the 4,000 square foot lot that the town currently owns. Instead, I hope the town decides to purchase the 10,000 square feet that is currently owned by a individual and not be sold to a developer. I really appreciate your time, and please be safe and stay warm. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in, Lisa. We appreciate it.
Okay. Moving on to next caller. Hello, caller ending 6706. You're on the air. Hello.
Hi, this is Judy Tilton. I live at 21 Lincoln Avenue. I am opposed to the development of the land off of Hawthorne. Guys, well, thank you for everything. And it's just such a small, it's in that area of urban renewal. We have so much development, and to put a 3,000 square foot on a 14,000, well, 10,000 and the 4,000 for the open space, it would just be crazy to have a big house back there. Let's try to keep East Hampton as rural as we can in Springs, and I definitely oppose this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling, Kate. Appreciate it.
And going on to next caller. Caller ending 5340. You are on the air. Hello.
Hi, this is Mia Chair-Teach. I'm calling from the Montauk Historical Society, and I'm calling in connection with the Carl Fisher House. Is this an appropriate time to make my comment?
Absolutely, Mia. Nice to hear from you.
Hi. Thank you. So first of all, we at Montauk Historical are thrilled that the town has bought the Fisher House because it's so essential to preserve an important piece of what is local and actually also national history. So we're really thrilled about that, and we're really eager to partner with you and create a wonderful, vibrant, relevant museum for this community and beyond. And we recognize, of course, that we need to negotiate a full licensing agreement, and that's going to take time. So we're very eager. I just wanted to, representing the MHS, to say that we're very eager to sign an interim agreement while the details are still being negotiated. And in the meantime, considering the size, the complexity and fragility and relative isolation of the Fisher House, we are very keen to put in place responsible MHS employees to act as caretakers who would provide around-the-clock on-site presence, particularly this time of the year with its unexpected and brutal weather conditions. We think is a really important thing. So that's essentially, again, it's a thank you for purchasing it. We really look forward to partnering with you, and we hope that can happen as soon as possible.
Thanks for calling in, Mia. We do look forward to working with Montauk Historical on this wonderful property.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll cycle back to the previous caller who we heard something on the line. Hello, caller, ending 8310. You are on the air. Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Can you please state your name for the board?
Hi. Virginia Neary. My husband and I live at 19 Lincoln Avenue, which is across the street from the 17 Hawthorne urban development lot that's under proposed modification. We submitted a letter strongly opposing the modification for the same reasons as the other speakers, but we also wanted to make the point that to permit either to sell the land to the applicant or to permit the applicant to build on the smaller lot would totally undermine the purpose for which the town bought these 2 lots originally in 2004, and also to point out that we at 19 Lincoln Avenue were required to grant the town a scenic easement when we purchased lots, adjacent lots on Jefferson Avenue. In order to annex those lots to our property, we had to grant a scenic easement, which prohibits us from ever re-subdividing the lots and rejoining the buildable lot with the other parcels purchased by our neighbors. So in other words, we were forced to kill a buildable lot and to allow a developer to build on an unbuildable lot would totally undermine what we did.
Virginia, we appreciate you calling in today.
Thank you.
Be well.
Let's see. And there is one new caller. Hello, caller ending 1115. You are on the air. Hello.
Good morning. I'm reading this letter that my husband wrote. I called in, but he's asked me to read this letter. My family and I live at 21 Lincoln Avenue.
I'm sorry, can you just tell us who you are?
Craig Tilton. I'm calling from my husband, who's standing right here. He can say hello. My family and I live at 21 Lincoln Avenue. I was just informed about the builder who wants to put up a 3,000 square foot house on a lot which is only 10,000 square feet, plus the 4,000 square feet of land that town owns for the purpose of protecting open space on Hawthorne Avenue. Peter, my concerns are if this is approved, the beauty of Springs will be compromised. There will be development of land which should remain natural. Please oppose this modification of the urban renewal map discussed at January 11th town board session. Let's keep the East End in its natural state. Let the builders know they cannot destroy the beautiful area where we call home. I am proud of the town of East Hampton for buying land for the purpose of protecting open space. Thank you, guys. This is Craig, Judy, Matthew, and Peter.
Thank
you,
Judy.
very much.
Take care.
Bye now.
Moving on to next caller. Hello, caller 3739. You're on the air. Hello.
Yeah, good morning. This is Michael Forst. I am calling with regards to the 17 Hawthorne urban renewal map. I wanted to clarify a few things that are being said that are not true. I think it's unfair to bundle me into some crazy developer that does not care about the environment. I have been building certified green homes way before the pack and have always been an environmental activist. I am for open space. I am for purchasing open space that's proper to purchase, whether it's farmlands, sensitive water areas. I am not for purchasing affordable building lots to take away from, people that live here to be able to afford to live here. I would say that if you live inside, you should be thanking a builder instead of ridiculing them all and putting them all together in some big pack of crazy developers that are ruining our environment. I don't fall underneath that, and it's offensive. To clarify, we are asking to build a 1,600 square foot, one-story house. I am not asking to build a 3,000 square foot house, which is fake news, okay? And I don't know who keeps saying it. Maybe that's what's allowed. That's not what I'm asking to build there. I'm asking to build a 1,600 square foot, one-story house. I have Suffolk County Health Department approval. I do not require any variances. As the 10,000 square foot lot, I have said that I am okay with having covenants on the property to keep it affordable and work through that. I find it very disturbing that board members are using their power to preserve their neighborhoods and taking affordable housing lots off. I think that it's upsetting that the only thing out there that we're talking about for affordable housing is something that the town builds and that the town manages. That seems to be the only game in town for affordable housing, and I think if it's an all hands on deck, well, then it should be an all hands on deck. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for calling in, Michael.
And going on to next caller. And caller 8764, you're on the air. Hello.
Good morning. It's David Bruder. Just a couple of brief comments. I hope that your discussion today concerning the proposed modification of what's referred to as 17 Hawthorne Street will also take into account the broader issue, because this similar issue currently manifests itself at several other locations, one in Lazy Point, one on Hartley Boulevard, and another one on Lincoln Avenue, just the ones that I'm familiar with, situations where the town has acquired, for open space purposes, part of a urban renewal parcel, and the other part remains in private ownership. In all of these instances, the town should follow through on what was started under the aegis of the board in 2003, 2004. That period, the board was forward-thinking, saving and preserving land, especially in places like the Springs where it's overdeveloped. The town has done a wonderful job of using CPF funds to eliminate development lots, potential development lots in the Springs. It's been the focus of much of the CPF effort. Back in that period of time, the CPF was deemed funds were not deemed available to merely reduce density by purchasing vacant land. But now the tide has turned. Those funds are available for that purpose. And if any of these lots that I'm referring to cannot be voluntarily sold by the owner, and Mr. Forst is not the owner, he is a contract vendee as far as I understand. The owner is someone who bought the land from the county after a tax foreclosure quite some time ago. If the town cannot negotiate a fair and reasonable purchase price, then the town has the right under the Town Code, Chapter 232, to impose, to take the land and have the court determine a fair price through the condemnation process, which hopefully won't be necessary in any of those cases, because I'm sure the town will appraise the land fairly as non-buildable portions of urban renewal parcels and then offer that full price to the owners of those respective properties. One more comment. Affordable housing, unfortunately, if it's not done under the auspices of the town, frankly, it doesn't remain affordable. There are no mechanisms in place to ensure that they are truly affordable. And when one builds these days a one-story house of, say, 1,600 square feet, it's often the case that the lower level becomes another 1,600 square feet of buildable, living area. So the size of a house that a builder in East Hampton puts on a small lot where he's allowed to build on a 10,000 square foot lot can be quite enormous and quite an imposition. One last thing, I just want to remind everyone that it seems that the planning board and the planning department has lost track of the fact that under the urban renewal plan back in 1976-77 when it was created, that in order for a lot to be created, an urban renewal parcel to be created of under 20,000 square feet, it also required a referral to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a variance. This 10,000 square foot lot that Mr. Forst has his eyes on does require a variance in order to be buildable. No such variance has been obtained. It requires a subdivision because it would be cut off from the other 2,000 square feet. No such minor subdivision has been obtained. Somehow people in the planning department and planning board think that they can do subdivisions and variances by the waving of a magic hand, and that's simply not the way it's supposed to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Okay, just going to double checking the fact that there are no new callers. Just double checking my notes for a second. At this point, there are no new callers on the line.
Thank you very much, Jason. In that case, we'll move right on to the topics of discussion. And the first topic of discussion is the one we've received the most public comment so far this morning on, and that is a request to amend the UR map SP 1 and 2, which is 17 Hawthorne Avenue in Springs. We're going to have a discussion about that amongst board members. The planning board has recommended that the town board allow this parcel to be developed. Part of the backstory on this is that the town bonded for $5 million for the purchase of lots within Springs in order to reduce density. Not quite sure I remember the exact year. It was 2004, 2005, I think, somewhere in that range. And they bought the adjoining 4,000 square foot. I believe we have Scott Wilson, who's with us, who can join and share a map.
Absolutely, he is on his way in.
So the town board, passed this bond and set about acquiring undersized lots within UR maps. And as was stated by one of the callers earlier, the process is generally that the owner of one of these lots has to seek the purchase of the other portion in order to make it a buildable lot. You can see that square in blue, that's 17 Hawthorne. The rectangle in green immediately adjacent is 4,000 square feet. The two were intended to be combined within the map. The town purchased and sterilized 4,000 square feet, thereby keeping this parcel from being able to be developed. Board members care to weigh in on whether or not we should approve this map modification.
Sure, I can start. And I did mention the first time this came up that I live in this neighborhood. I can't see the property from my house, but full disclosure. I also like to say that I'm grateful to all the first responders in our community. But I look at this application blindly without an application or an applicant's name tied to it. That density reduction referendum that you referred to, Peter, was passed in 2001 by a margin of 2-1. The board then bonded $5 million. And in fact, we're still paying, they did a 30-year PPU. We're still paying debt service on that bond. This year we'll pay about $355,000 in debt service. The town board at the time, after they, passed the bond, they formed a committee and they established, and it was interesting because the committee that they formed, the Small Lot Acquisition Committee, was a 5-year commitment, which is very unusual for citizen committees. And they appointed folks based on their hamlets. And they had 2 appointments, though, from Springs and Montauk, because this density reduction, for the purpose of density reduction, and was considered something, that was really going to be focused in Springs and Montauk. And from my perspective, in many cases, they completed the job where there were, 2 undersized lots. They purchased both of them. But in this case, they purchased the 4,000 square foot lot and did not, it sounds like from the owner, the town at the time did not approach him and probably should have. And it's my point of view that we should just finish the job that a previous town board started. We know the community was supportive of, reducing density in areas like this. And I think we should just, as I said earlier, finish the job.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just echo the sentiments that Kathy has, and I would also like to add that I don't know if it's clear to everyone that not only was this a town board action, as Kathy referred to, there was a permissive referendum. It was put on the ballot townwide, and it passed, and that's the 2-to-1 margin. I also look at the urban renewal areas as the most dense developments in town. We know that Springs is suffering from, as in other places in town, the impacts of the amount of septic systems due to the density and other issues for the density, and the issue with affordable housing. That's a tough one for me, weighing that out for first responders, but unfortunately a 1,600 square foot home in these areas are not staying in the affordable housing market, and would be well out of anyone's range if it was put to market. And that's where my reservations on this modification lie.
Thank you, Kate. Anyone else want to weigh in here?
Yep, I'll weigh in quickly too. For me, again, I look at it blindly as just what the intent of a prior town board was, and what the community voted on as a referendum. And I'm not one to undo a prior town board's actions or what the community voted for. So I would not vote for us to combine these properties. I do believe we should finish, I think Kathy mentioned that we should finish what the intent was and purchase the rest of the property, as there are others that may be where we should, I think Mr. Buddha pointed it out.
Thank you, Sylvia. David?
The referendum in 2001 was a referendum which 33.45% of the population voted in that town election. The election, the total amount of voters in that election that were allowable was 15,335. Yes, it was a 2-to-1 number for that open space referendum. Yes being 3,283 people, no being 1,846 people. I have no problem with the referendum that they placed forward on that day for density reduction in 2001. I did have a problem with the way that the money was then ended up spent, and the town at that time did not go forward and complete many of the transactions that they would to get the density reduction at that time before using the $5 million without allowing us 20 years later to deal with this conflict. I think that there, as I might have said, it was deceitful in the past, but I also think it was just bad government at that time then too, not to go forward, make a greater amount of contact to the individuals. The person on this property that is selling this property did buy it before the town bought their property. I think what we have to look at is certain times also within what the comprehensive plan says of 2005. They studied this pretty hard, and many times in the comprehensive plan, they recommended that we look at urban renewal maps, goals, and objectives. They looked at the Koppelman report in 2002, and that one, at that time, there was 3,183 vacant lots that were available, and the 38 urban renewal maps representing 40% of the potential build-out. They then reviewed that and then drafted and brought that down by the Lisa LaCorey plan in 2005, way down almost by another 40% in density reduction, just by looking at the maps differently. There is residential build-outs within these urban renewal maps in the comprehensive plan that we have to look at. And the total build-out that they ended up bringing to it was 889 lots, which represented, a 72% reduction in the comparable prior estimate. That's what the goal of one of the goals of the comp plan was, to reduce build-out. Now, the comp plan, which was in 2005, probably started in 1999 or a little bit earlier. I'm not so familiar with that. That 2005 comp plan, in many regards, is outdated to where we are now. We're at a critical issue right now with trying to find where individuals of affordably means can affordably live in the town of East Hampton right now. I believe what they should have done in 2004, as they did in other areas on Lincoln, other areas in the town of East Hampton, was purchase the complete set of the properties, and they did not. And now here we are 20 years later trying to find out why didn't they perfect this. Urban renewal maps are everywhere in the town of East Hampton. As Mr. Buda knows, if you look at them, they look very weird. Sometimes they have major, large cul-de-sacs out there, free-flowing forms, but the town has been looking into them since 1976 and has never completed probably what the job of the comp plan was. I think we should now are going to start looking at this as Rick Whalen had called in the past. I've contacted other people that have the same exact issue. Their children people that work for the town have children. They can't even they can't build on that lot for their children now because of the same issue, okay? There are ways in which the neighbors can buy this property. That was one of the recommendations in the town code, in the comp plan, is for the neighbors to go in and assist it. And that may be what happened at 19 Lincoln, that the neighbors might have bought it, and then maybe portions of it might have been sterilized. I don't really know. But there's so many actions or inactions here that we now have a request of a property owner, of a contract vendee, that states they'll be willing to covenant the size of the property. When we look at appraised values of property, one of the first things that appraisers do, they look at, first of all, location. Location is Springs. I know it well. I live there. But in Springs, also, with the smaller size, if you just go by the appraisal of apples and apples, most of the time it would be the smaller GFA can only be built, smaller GFA would be from the smaller lot area. Now, the smaller lot area, smaller GFA, typically would have a smaller appraised value of the property, which to me would keep the lot and the house potentially more affordable. I don't like using eminent domain for things or places that were not historically known as government property for a long time. This is a buildable lot that's been taxable as a buildable lot since the initial purchaser built on it right now. I think what we're getting ourselves into right now by stating this is a place that we do not know where all these lots are. I can go through 16th Street, I can go through Gardner's Ave, I can go through Lincoln Street, Norfolk Street, Broadway, I could go through another 13th Street, 14th Street, 86 Harbor Boulevard, the 88 Harbor Boulevard the town bought, and it forced two lots next to it to be built on 4,000 square feet of land. That's a tight property and a tight house. So what is going to be our precedent? What are going to be our actions next? Are we going to do this every lot at a time? Or are we going to take a global look as we were supposed to in the 2005 comp plan? If we're looking now, instead of doing a global look, to look at it individually, I look at it individually as a place that if we can get the right covenants on it, and the planning board stated yes, they get the rest of the permits, that this should be a potential of a place where we could try to put in affordably housed property, not by the definition of the law affordably priced, but affordable house. And as a town, we want to continue to move forward in adaptive ways to create that type of affordable pricing so our next generations can stay here. This might be one of those options in the areas that we have to look into. And that's why I'm open to looking into it.
Thank you, David. You kind of bring up a point, and I know one of the callers had mentioned that they were aware of several other similar situations where the town had bought a portion of lots that were to be combined under the UR map plan. And the town may not have purchased the other property. The problem with the town buying these properties is that they become sterilized as open space, and there's no way to remove that designation from them without a townwide referendum, I believe. So essentially, that action sterilizes under the map plan, sterilizes the adjacent property. The town has the authority to modify the map, but I'm reluctant to modify the map in this particular case because the town clearly intended for these lots to be sterilized and ultimately remain as open space. And because that's clearly the intention, I think that we should move forward with that. I mean, I am very sympathetic and torn to the idea that small lots are more affordable. But you can also see on this map alone the number of vacant, undeveloped lots of greater size. And they don't have, town purchased portions that were supposed to be combined. I am interested in knowing how many similar situations there are where the town bought a portion of a UR map, thereby sterilizing the other without a map modification. I think that would be helpful to know going forward. But as was previously stated, there's nothing that would force this property to remain affordable in an affordable housing program. It would be a market house. And for those reasons, I don't support the map modification in this particular instance.
If I could just add sorry, I apologize, Peter.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I do support the town purchasing the remainder of the property because, if we are going to deny the map modification, then essentially we are fully sterilizing that property, and we should acquire it from the owner, as was intended by the map plan, that one owner would buy out the other owner in order to make it either a buildable parcel or, in this case, preserved land, which is the intent, obviously, that the town board had at the time.
So I'm not going to harp too much on it, but for an example of where it was done correctly, is on the screen right now is that green area to the right there, bottom right. Both those lots were purchased within a year of each other, and from property owners. That's where the town did it correctly. That second strip should be actually green. But on this map itself, if it got shifted, I can show you at least 2 to 3 other ones. And there's other locations. So what I'm getting to right now, Peter, is exactly what you said. Where's the priority for purchase, and where the town do this in the same fashion? Where the town's initiative denuded the buildable rights of the private property owner, and two. So that's, to me, is an important context that we should get in front of, because we are now setting up the precedent that we have to do the same action every time now. When the town sterilized it, not through the code, but through legislative or purchasing actions. I think that's important.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, well, I think it clearly sounds like the majority of the board feels in this particular case that the modification should not be granted. And do we have consensus on the town seeking to purchase the remaining, to purchase this property to complete the map plan?
I also support that.
I do as well.
David?
If we were to do so, we would have to go through the same process as other properties, unless it's going to be through eminent domain. And that's all, which I'll wait for that process to go forward.
Yeah, well, I spoke to Scott about this, and maybe Scott can join us. He can take the map down. David Buddha had mentioned go out for appraisal, but here there's a contract. So I believe we could use the contracted price. Scott, correct me if I'm wrong.
But it depends on the funding source. If the funding source is through CPF, then there's an advisory committee.
I think we would want to go through a little bit more rigorous process and do an appraisal.
But I would think we would use CPF funds to purchase the 10,000.
I would support that because it's intended for open space. That was the purpose of the bond. That was how the funds were used for the adjoining 4,000 square foot, and I do think that would be an acceptable use of CPF funds. So I agree with you, Kathy. Okay, so it sounds like we have consensus on that as well. So thank you very much, and we will move on now to special events discussion, and Kathy Burke-Gonzalez, who's involved with the Special Events Committee, and Kate Rogers, who's a new liaison to that committee as well. You have a presentation. I believe David McMaster is going to be joining us.
Right. David McMaster should be in the waiting room. Gabriella Gallier, John Rooney, and Tim Treadwell.
And they're all coming in right now.
Beautiful. Thank you.
No problem.
Great. Thanks so much. I'll turn it over to you, Kathy.
Gabriella is going to share her screen. So, Tim Treadwell.
Did somebody mute their feed in the
Yeah, we have a
background?
little feedback in the background. Okay.
Seems good now.
Gabriella, if you can make it full screen, if that's possible. Beautiful, thank you. So the Special Events Committee was a committee that was formed in 2014. We meet every week and we review special event applications because in the past, these applications were sent out via email to all of the different departments and there was no real, comprehensive look at it. Gabrielle, if you go to the next slide, please. So the members of the committee include Chief Sarlo, Chief Fire Marshal Dave Brown, Town Clerk Carol Brennan, Superintendent of Recreation John Rooney, Clerk of the Trustees Francis Bach, Assistant Town Attorney David McMaster, Kate Rogers is now just started with us and myself. And a number of us have been on this committee for the last 8 years. And what we find is that, we get better every year. Different kinds of applications come up. Some of them we've seen before, some we haven't. And we've just gotten more focused over the years. And just to put things in perspective, in 2018, the town issued 547 permits. 2019 was 577. And then 2021, we did just shy of 500. And what we were finding, because we were still living in a COVID world, that the applications were for smaller numbers. So if we go to the next slide, so as I said, each year what we do is the committee sits down after the season and we hold an annual debrief. And we, look at things and discuss issues and concerns that came up, throughout the prior season. And after a great deal of discussion of 2021, we're proposing some modifications to the town code. And we'd really like to see these put into effect before the start of the new season. There's also some other topics like commercial activity on town beaches, as well as special events on commercial properties that we believe probably need a more thorough and thoughtful discussion and we would like to see in place for the 2023 season. We go to the next slide. So there are 5 different, according to our code, there are 5 different special event permits: residential, commercial, public property, parade, walk, run, and art sale. The ones that we deal with the majority of the time are the first 3: residential, commercial, and public property. So if I could just give folks kind of an overview of the application process for those listening at home that may have never put forward a special event application. We have 2 different forms. We've got the standard application and we have a caterer short form, and that came into effect a couple of years ago where we met with caterers and we felt that there was a way to streamline it if they were, doing clam bakes and whatnot on our beaches with less than 50 people. But the standard application gets used for, all of the applications types that I just mentioned. And what applicants need to include is a brief narrative describing the event, a sketch that shows the setup and layout, a parking plan if parking is along the roadside, a certificate of liability insurance if the event is being held on public or commercial property, a scanned copy of the applicant's photo ID, and at some point, depending on what type of application, there could be application fees, permit fees, and or cleanup deposits. And that was last set in 2019, those rates. And then there may be also a need if folks are having a tent or if it's on a public beach here in town, that there could be a tent application that needs to go to the fire marshal or a special event application that has to be filed with the trustees. So now I'd like to just talk about some of the proposed modifications we have to Chapter 151 special event permits. So these are there's a handful of considerations we'd like the board to look at and consider. First and foremost, and I know Sylvia has said this in the past, that we should codify the Special Events Committee, because the consensus of the committee is that this is really working, and we think it's really the best way, most productive way to continue. We're also suggesting that we remove the cleanup deposit requirement for smaller events. So if you're having an event on public property for 1 to 50 people, there's a $50 deposit. If you're 51 to 100 people, there's a $100 deposit. And that deposit is just what it says, cleanup deposit. It's refundable if you picked up and cleaned up after yourself. And we really, in the 8 years that we've been doing this for these smaller events, we can't find any nexus between an instance where there was, folks left a mess behind and we had to have a crew go down and clean up after it. So we'd like to remove that for the smaller events. And another perspective, we pulled the reports for cleanup deposit revenue for special events. In 2019, it was $4,850. In 2021, it was $1,650. And I think what you'd see is the numbers would be relatively the same if we no longer had a cleanup deposit for these, for events under 100 people on public property. The other thing we'd like to do is codify the rush fee for expedited applications. Right now, we charge caterers when there are catered events on the beach. There's a $100 rush fee. This should be in the code, and it should also not just apply to public property, because there are times when you think about the folks that sit on the committee and how valuable everybody's time in the season, we all carve out the hour or 2 hours, each Wednesday when we meet. It just really kind of creates a lot of havoc when we're getting applications and the event is, it's a Thursday and the event's on, Friday or Saturday. And now you're asking everybody to stop and evaluate and give it a hard look. So we believe that we should codify the rush fee. We'd also like to have it in the code that we're requiring permit holders to carry in, carry out. The application does ask how you're going to dispose of your trash, but I think that there should be more emphasis on this. And it's in keeping with where, the town is going. And so with some of the pilot programs we're having at some of our beaches and road ends. We'd also like to increase the liability insurance from $1 million to $2 million. The code now says $1 million, but we've actually been requiring $2 million. So it may make more sense to actually take the dollar figure out of the code and have that set by resolution, so it gives future boards flexibility. And then lastly, for this slide, we want to require commercial property applicants to submit a copy of their site plan approval. This is standard practice with other types of applications, and it would just make, when we do have questions, rather than us having to go to the planning department and track down the approved site plan, it would be included in the application. So there's some modifications that we'd like to see made to the events application and special events application, and that is in section 151-5 of the code. Right now, the caterer short form only applies to those beaches that have their own parking lots, say like Indian Wells, Kirk Beach, Atlantic. It should not be used if someone, for example, is having a party on Marine Boulevard on the beach in front of their house, because that needs a hard look at the parking, and parking isn't considered in the short form. So we need clarification there. We'd also like to see some of the applicants provide a little bit more detailed narrative of the event. When we're looking at an application and we can't quite figure out what it is they're trying to do, we lose a week, because as the committee meets weekly. So it would be helpful and productive for everyone if there was just more detailed information given. The other thing is many times we get incomplete applications and the committee doesn't review incomplete applications. So I think in order to really make it easy for the applicant, we can create a checklist. So when I said earlier the types of things that are required to submit an application, literally they have to check it off to make sure, you know, everything is there. And then we need to really reaffirm the need to submit sketches, because again, that's critical in the committee's review of these applications. And then the language in the applicant acknowledgement, which gets notarized, needs updating. So now we want to move on to permit conditions. Some of that language needs to be strengthened as well. So we'd like to add language to permits that clarify that the beach is still open to the public and does not give exclusive rights to the property. You know, we're very cognizant, particularly, you know, on public property or our beaches, that everyone has the right to enjoy them, and we're very conscious of the footprint of, you know, these events. And that's why, quite frankly, it's been a pleasure working with our local caterers, because we've met with them as a group and we're all on the same page there, and they are very cognizant of how they set up their parties down at the beach. We'd also like to add language prohibiting the use of sparklers, fireworks, and fire lanterns. For instance, fire lanterns are in the state code, but we think we need to reiterate that, so that, and that was something that came up with the fire marshal. And then we will also need to strengthen language on the special event permit, specifying that parking lots are still part of the beach property. You know, we know that, but sometimes applicants are looking to, you know, and sometimes these are the commercial applicants that think that they can, you know, set up their booth for a particular product and hand out free samples, and that's, you know, obviously not allowed under the code. We're also, you know, since we meet weekly in the way the timing falls and many times we don't get complete applications, we'd like to lengthen the deadlines for submissions, particularly for some of the smaller events. Larger events would still stay at about 60 days. Go to, you know, 251 or more, it would be 8 weeks. But the time frame works better if we break it down into, let's say, 4 buckets instead of 3, the way we currently have it. So that really is a true reflection of the time needed to review, and in some cases require additional information from the applicants. And then we're going to talk a little bit about surf construction, and I'm going to turn that over to David McMaster.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. So, as Kathy said, I'm going to talk about surf construction for as it currently stands and our ideas for the 2022 season. If we could go to the next slide, please. Okay. So, the town issues seasonal permits to commercial surf instructors operating on town beaches, most notably Ditch Plains Beach. Over the years, Ditch Plains has become one of the most well-known and most popular surf spots and beaches on the East Coast. At the same time, Ditch Plains has experienced significant coastal erosion and worsening water quality. It is the Special Events Committee's belief that the combination of increasing crowds, popularity, and the worsening environmental conditions is not sustainable and potentially dangerous. So as a result, the town board modified the permit conditions for commercial surf instruction last year in an effort to improve public safety, reduce crowd size, and prevent the commercialization of town property, which, as you know, includes town beaches. The 2021 permit conditions for surf instruction were as follows. The hours of operation were from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The dates of operation were from May 1st to October 30th. There was one-to-one instruction only. There were no camps permitted. That's because camps had a higher ratio of students to instructors. There were 10 people total at any one time at Ditch Plains, 5 students and 5 instructors. Now, this condition, I believe, comes from a permit that was issued to one of the operators at Ditch Plains. And so we limited those operators to Ditch Plains. So if you got a permit for Ditch Plains, you could operate only at Ditch Plains. All instructors must be CPR and first aid certified. One person on site must be lifeguard certified. And there was a sign-in sheet that was required to be maintained on site and available at the request of Marine Patrol and or the town police department. That let us show up to the beach and check to make sure that the surf schools or surf instructors were following the limits on number of students. And I think that was a good idea. The last condition was that students and instructors were to wear identifiable bright colored rash guards. And there's an asterisk that says the committee has been using its discretion regarding the number of people at other town-owned beaches, such as Beach Lane, where there was a permit issued to, I believe, Lars from Main Beach Surf Shop for some lessons there. Next slide, please.
Well, could I just say, go back? So I get, as David pointed out, this when we put this presentation together, we took it from, because the majority of the applications for surf instruction are at Ditch. But really, here it says can only operate at Ditch Plains, but it's what we're saying is that you can only operate at one location. We're not looking to permit, a commercial entity to operate at multiple locations at the same time, which was the committee's thought in 2021.
Should the dates of operation go through the end of October? Is there a particular reason why it says the 30th? So the 31st?
That's a good point, Peter.
That might be.
Is that a typo or?
That might be a typo. That should have been the 31st. Yeah. And part of the I don't know, David, you want to talk about the part of the rationale for that, when the water gets cold and.
Sure. Well, so the part of the reason too is that whether the facilities at the beaches remain open, the bathrooms and all of that, but then once the water drops below a certain temperature, it becomes necessary for people to wear thicker wetsuits, and the end of October is pretty much in general, from my own past experience, you don't have to wear a winter wetsuit until you get into November. And the winter wetsuits are thicker. They require people to wear hoods. And it's the committee's belief that, it becomes harder for just instructors to communicate with students when you're having to, communicate through a neoprene hood. And it's just inherently more dangerous when the water gets colder. It's one thing if there's an incident and the water is 65 degrees, but when you're dealing with somebody that's injured in, 45-degree water, it's just, I think, a lot more serious. So that was part of our rationale for limiting the duration to October 31st.
Thanks, Dave.
So we have decided for 2022 that we're in favor, we being the Special Events Committee, that we support the need to continue the permit conditions that were set forth in 2021. We have received a lot of positive feedback from the community, other surfers that we feel comfortable recommending that the town board maintain those conditions. In addition to the following recommendations that apply to 2 of the permit conditions. And those additional recommendations are one, that all instructors be CPR and first aid certified. Two, that at least one person on site must be lifeguard certified. And it should be noted that providing this type of documentation is standard procedure for lifeguarded programs. And I will just say, in response to the earlier caller about the rash guards with COVID, is that my understanding is that some of the surf schools were providing their students with wetsuits, which are directly make direct contact with the student's skin, whereas the rash guards go over the wetsuit. So I don't really buy the argument there are COVID concerns about making somebody wear a rash guard over a neoprene wetsuit. And I think that the benefits of identifying, surf instructors and surf students outweigh the potential downsides or COVID risk of requiring them to wear a bright colored rash guard over the wetsuit.
So it was brought up by that same caller, the hours of operation, which are proposed to continue to be 9 to 3 p.m. And I know at least for, the early part of the season from May 1st, at least through the end of June, that children are in school and school hours usually would extend until about 3. And so there's no opportunity for them to get instruction in that situation. Has there been any, can you talk about the rationale for that, or if there's any consideration to have those hours adjusted during the school year?
So if you recall, Peter, the committee last year, when we were looking to tighten up the permit conditions for surf instruction, had recommended 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it was the board that came back and wanted to make it earlier. And it was the board then came to the consensus of 3 p.m. We could consider going maybe an hour longer in May and June, but then I will
during
say
the week.
During the week, I wouldn't do it on the weekends.
Well, there's no, I don't think there's any, I'm just addressing the comment that,
no, I understand
that students, children who are seeking instruction would be in school during those 2 months and would not be able to take advantage of lessons if they have to be curtailed by 3 o'clock. Would there be some consideration of shifting the hours?
It's a board decision. It's not the committee's decision. So
well, I mean, I'm just trying to understand from the committee if there's any rationale or reason why we shouldn't do that.
Well, Peter, just one concern to bring up on this topic is that when we get into the month of October and we see daylight hours decrease, I don't know how much light there is. I know at the end of October, obviously it's fall behind, but I'm just wondering to consider what are daylight hours as we get through October.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have, the sun doesn't set before about 4:20 at the shortest day of the year. So, I think you could reasonably go till 4. And, I could appreciate, being able to provide for student-aged children, instruction. But I don't agree with extending the hours on weekends or non-school periods, like the middle of summer. But maybe we should consider that, adjusting the hours somewhat for those time frames.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I would agree with that, Peter.
Kathy, the only addition I would have is where you had, prohibit fireworks and sparklers. We need to prohibit any balloons.
Okay.
And the fire lanterns, I would prohibit them. I think we passed some legislation way back in maybe 2011, 2012, that fire lanterns had to be tethered.
No, those are in the state code. We don't allow open flame like that. I mean, the only real open flame that we allow at like on the beach would be the beach fire, in a container, and the caterer running the grill. I don't think.
Well, it's certainly.
I don't even think, David, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's any candles or anything. I think that they do lighting. It's the like faux candles. We're very specific about lighting on. Oh, good. Chief Sarlo's here.
Hi, guys.
Well, I agree that a reminder that fireworks and fire lanterns, is probably a good idea. And the balloon suggestion, Sylvia, thanks for that. That makes a lot of sense as well, since we do not allow those anymore. Any other comments or questions from board members?
Well, we've got another couple slides that David's going to present.
Okay, let's move on then.
Okay, for broader discussion, I wasn't sure if you were doing this one or if I was doing this one, Kathy, but I'm happy to do it. Next slide, please.
No, you don't want to go. This is the slide we want.
Want to go through this one? This is discussion about public property and vendors and commercial use of the beach.
So, broader discussion, public property. As Kathy brought up in the earlier part of the presentation, the committee identified areas that it's requesting guidance from the town board. How does the town board wish to manage commercial activity on town beaches? We feel as a committee that we've kind of reached the maximum of our ability to deal with this issue within the constraints of the existing town code provisions. Then this is evidenced by the number of applications that we receive every year from a variety of commercial operators, including beach chair and umbrella vendors, beach fire vendors, applications for events that are brand promotions that have a purported charitable tie-in. An example of that would be a for-profit tequila company that wants to do some kind of event on the beach and donate the proceeds to a charity. Fitness classes on the beach, kayak and paddleboard rentals and lessons on the beach, and surf instruction. The committee receives applications for all of those events, and we deal with those on a case-by-case basis. I think the consensus from the committee members is that that might not be the best approach for the town's future. That if we had a overall policy or directive to strive for, that might help keep things in check. And then the other point would be, does the town wish to place a cap on the size of catered events on town beaches? The idea being to limit the footprint and minimize the commercialization on town beaches.
So let's just go back to that slide. So I know that the beach committee, they had talked about how to deal with beach fires and brought up, as a possible option, permitting, the beach fire vendors. But, we feel that we've got a workaround for the surf instruction for this year, because the current, the permit conditions we put in place last summer seem to be working, so we can do that. But we do think that there needs to potentially be another section of the code written to deal with commercial activity, because it's really not for the special event committee to decide whether or not we should have beach fire vendors and beach chair and umbrella vendors. That there needs to be, and a broader discussion with the community. Like,
isn't that a special
how
event?
much is too much commercialization of our beaches, right?
Right. Well, I mean, to me, we don't handle peddlers through the special events committee. It's a different whole activity. It's not a special event. It's actually a business that's seeking to, use public property. And I think that's where I think the law already covers it. And for somebody to set up a beach operation, and I frankly don't favor brand promotions on the beach, even if they're giving money to a charitable organization. It's that it's the commercialization of our beaches, holding classes and having beach fire vendors and beach chair and umbrella vendors, to me, just really diminishes the natural quality of our beaches. And it very quickly becomes a sandy shopping mall. And, I don't think we really want to see that. At least I don't. And, I know we have issues with beach fires that are somewhat ongoing, and we need to try to figure that out and solve the issues surrounding that, with debris being left on beaches, fires not being properly handled. That I think is a separate discussion, but to have, somebody who's going to provide a beach fire to someone, you still have to, seems to me, regulate it. That aside, I just think that I think you got the surf situation pretty much ironed out. I don't object to kayaks and paddleboard rentals the way they've been regulated in the past. I don't think they've really, caused any problems. There's a limited number of locations that that vendor might set up, but generally don't personally feel that we should be promoting further commercialization of our beaches.
I may jump in, Mr. Supervisor?
Absolutely. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments that have come up amongst the board, the committee in the past year or so. In general, while we haven't had too many problems with kayaks and paddleboards, and we seem to have a general handle on some of the surf lesson issues, we just feel as a committee we're starting to be put in a position of legislating by committee instead of by the board. And we certainly feel that our good faith decisions on what to approve and what not to approve are impacting commercial businesses that are not actually permitted or regulated in any other way. And they're also impacting the public's use of some of these spaces. And I think we've done a pretty good job, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but we've done a really good job of taking these broad issues into consideration when we grant permits and come up with the conditions. But we feel long-term that particularly the regulation of some of these commercial uses needs to be specifically delineated through board action with input from the public, so that we can get a general consensus as to how these things should be allowed, permitted, what steps they need to take in order to be able to use those spaces. And, we're very sensitive to the idea we have local people trying to earn a living, but we're also very sensitive to the idea that the view or the perception that our public open spaces can be profited on and commercialized is troubling to us in the long term. So we're really looking to kind of bring this up as a broader discussion, whether there's some permitting and licensing that are involved that takes it out of the event committee's hands. A lot of the things we feel we're signing off on aren't really special events anymore. And it becomes quite a challenge. Additionally, to expand on this topic, we're also a little concerned about some of the commercial businesses that are pre-existing non-conforming in residential neighborhoods that are using the special event permit process to expand their use and have exponential impacts on their neighbors and neighborhoods for traffic and noise and volume and things like that. So we're really, this is the great intentions and a well run committee that has made great strides, but we also feel it needs to be looked at in a little bit longer view by the board and the town itself.
Yeah, I agree, Chief. And really, when you start talking about vendors, that in these cases, it really isn't a special event per se. It's not day-to-day operations of a business trying to use public property.
Correct.
And, to some degree, the clam bakes have kind of become that as well. And we handle that a little differently. For instance, at the road ends where we have peddlers that provide food carts or whatever.
Right.
And really, some of these other things probably should be handled through peddling license, and maybe we should look at that legislation to see if that shouldn't be adjusted. I agree, your committee, special events committee, shouldn't be really dealing with these in many cases.
Well, I do have to say, though, the clam bake situation, the catered events on the beaches, the caterers aren't doing the application. The resident or the homeowner, I'm putting the application in if I'm hiring a clam bake company to cater for my family. I think that's a little bit different than having a business entity, filling out an application, because, surf instruction and kayak paddleboard rentals, we've been doing that under the auspices of the special event committee, and it really should come out of another section of the code. And the committee is fine. We're the ones that are appointed to oversee that as well. If that's a application process, if it's going out for RFP for different locations. But it really needs, as Mike said, a longer look. And David, if you could just, we do have a peddling section of the code. How does that hold up, compared to what we're talking about right now?
So there is some overlap, Kathy, but and I actually think Treadwell from the Marine Patrol could talk about this specifically in the context of the beach fire service company that we permitted last year, where the transaction happens off of the beach, and it's done on the internet beforehand through their website, and they're just using the town property with equipment that they've rented beforehand. It's unclear that it really that constitutes peddling. And there has been cases in litigation in justice court where there's one particular defense attorney who used to work at this office who takes the position that this is not peddling. This does not constitute peddling, and it's a loophole. There is another way to look at that, but I will, say that it's ambiguous. And we could tighten up the town code a little bit on that to include, internet transactions that relate to use of town property, and include that within the definition of peddling. So it
seems to me that recurring commercial uses shouldn't really be, reviewed by the special events committee necessarily. We should have a different section of code that addresses that. And to the chief's point, on commercial properties with an existing site plan or pre-existing in a location, at a certain point, if they're repeatedly, doing activity beyond what the normal scope of their existing business is, at a certain point, it's no longer special, if you will, and it becomes part of our standard operating practice. So, those two things are something, and I appreciate the committee bringing this to our attention. We should take a little closer look, deeper dive on, and see how best to address that.
Yeah, we've got Tim Treadwell here, so I think it would be a great opportunity to hear from him, because
Kathy, if I could say quickly on the last part about the commercial businesses, is that we previously as a town used to say each year the restaurants or hotels were allowed a certain number of weddings. I think that started out with the Crow's Nest, and we gave everybody 6 weddings a season. And that was it across the board. And then it was challenged because it wasn't in the town code, and so it became a case-by-case basis. I think that it would help the town and make enforcement easier to go back to a system where we had a specified number of special events that commercial establishments could have each season. And that's just my thought on that, because like Peter said, is after a certain number of events every weekend, it's no longer special, and it really needs to go to the planning board.
Thanks, David. We have Senior Harbor Master Treadwell with us here. How are you today, Tim?
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me. I pretty much agree with what both Chief Sarlo and David said about the peddling on the beach. I think that part of the problem is in the code when it discusses peddling, and when we were issuing HBS violations, the section in the code is more for someone moving from place to place with some sort of conveyance. It doesn't really tie in specifically to that activity on the beach. There's definitely gray area there. So I think that if we were to somehow clean that up in the code and specify that, what exactly entitles peddling on the beach, that would be hugely helpful to our cause. And then whether or not the town board decides whether or not certain vendors should be awarded a contract, that would be a separate matter, I believe. But as it is now, the door is kind of open for all kinds of people to jump in and either sell beach fires or rent chairs and rent umbrellas, and it's only going to get worse. HBS was very public, but there was also a couple guys in the West, in Amagansett, that were trying to do the same thing, that didn't quite get as much PR. But there's a lot of people trying to get in on that business. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and I think, again, taking a look at that section of the town code, peddling, and seeing there are some revisions and modifications there to address some of the other issues and take some of the onus off of the committee in trying to determine these things, that we should have a more consistent town policy within the code on this. So this is a very helpful discussion.
So I guess where the committee would like to have some clarity moving forward for the 2022 season is if the board is comfortable right now, allowing the surf instruction the way we discussed it, kayak and paddleboard rentals, which are mostly on the back bays. And then are we at this point in time saying that we do not want any beach chair and umbrella vendors, beach fire vendors? We've already, the brand promotions, with the charitable tie-ins, we've nixed those, and fitness classes, is there an appetite for that? If it's a quiet beach in the morning, no more than a certain number of people. I mean, we get to a point where we're feeling like we're setting policy and we shouldn't be. That should be, coming.
Right. So to your point, Kathy, that's exactly right. I think the town board, we really should have a discussion about and try to find out from the public, where the sweet spot is. But my sense is that we need to set up the commercial activities on the beach, kind of legislation, and scope it out and have it spelled out and have a way to enforce it.
Well, if I could just step back in time a little bit, because this is, I just want to go to the broader discussion points. When I was more actively engaged in paddleboarding and kayaking, I believe it was almost 12 years ago, there was a commercial mass gathering permit that went into a commercial gathering permit to a commercial assembly permit. Initially, it was a permit for anyone that was, engaged with five participants or more. Then it was any participants or more, and then we morphed it back into a special events permit, which, mostly some of the providers of those services are, it's so one and done, singular. Excuse me, Peter, for using that word there. Action, meaning it's one application that comes in once a year, compared to, 13 different, special events. It might be for lobster bakes or such on there. So I don't know if we look back at what the code used to be as far as be a commercial mass gathering permit where you had the fees set into that, and that's a section of the code that should be either recodified or readdressed to make it separate from the special events committee. It might be an easier, streamlined way that anyone knows that if you're paying for anything, either remotely, online, or cash on the day, it still needs a permit for any commercial activities. As far as the beach fires and such, that was an option that the committee the Beach Advisory Group committee had mentioned to allow for someone to manage fires. I'm up in the air, and this is the crossover on it then too. What I don't really care for is to see the branding of everything on the beach set up for during the day for 20 umbrellas or 20 chairs. To me, that's a little bit distasteful on there. I do agree with the chief, and specifically even with what Peter said, is that if you're in a pre-existing non-conforming condition on your property and you consistently add for things that you're not allowed, okay, you are now changing your use, or you're expanding your use. That's a zoning board issue. If you want to try to expand the pre-existing non-conforming condition in a commercial property, or commercial acting property, might be residential, you either have to do that through a stipulation, other means of law, or there's or you have to go ask for your variance. Right now, this committee is almost acting as arbiters of a quasi, zoning board to do so. So I think that's something we have to tangibly look at. As far as surf instructions, if you don't mind, I'll just go, Kathy, because it was a good introduction. As far as surf instructions, I personally would be interested in allowing more in the morning than maybe more in the afternoon. Typically, a lot of the weather conditions are better in the morning. Wind is down. Also, there's less conflict from people on the beach. More people set up on the beach, let's say 10 o'clock maybe-ish, for the rest of the day and stay later. And then what you're doing is that, so I think taking a hard look at extending hours before 9 o'clock, I would be supportive on, because I think there's less conflict. All of this right now we're dealing with is how to try to decrease conflict, but also allow for enforcement mechanisms. But a lot of the other bullet points on there to me are good on the surf instructing, but I think there's ways to expand it to appropriate timeframes on there. The rest of some of these permit modifications, Kathy, and the rest of your committee, I think have hit the nail on the head, which are very important, because I went to an event, and I was just going down to with a family to a bonfire at Wyborgs this year. I went to a village beach, and the setup down there was, it was huge globes, music playing. And it was something that I wouldn't want to see in the town, and it was way over the top, too much. So what's happening now is that these events are becoming so large and take a lot of time to review. Everyone on your committee, Kathy, has another job to do also. Mm-hmm. Okay, and for us to add this to it, we need more time to do the job correctly. So reaffirming that, sketches, acknowledgments on there, I think that is a very reasonable request of the applicant that wants to have this type of event on the public property. Lastly, as I know we're going to discuss, some of these potential changes, I don't know how that affects Chapter 91, and I believe you have a representative of the trustees on the committee also. If there's anything that we might have to do, that might be codified change to the beach and might affect Chapter 91, we would have to do that through in coordination with the trustees also. But besides that, it's a deep dive into it, and it's something that I believe if we don't make changes right now, that would be the definition of insanity. I like having people on our beaches and enjoy it, but there are ways where it's just too much on there, and we're in a little bit of that precipice right now. Thank you for taking my comments.
Thanks, David.
And the last bullet that talks about do we want to place a cap on the size of catered events on town beaches? Particularly with COVID, we're seeing that like 90% of our permits for beaches are 50 people or less. And the remaining are mostly, lifeguard tournaments, sandcastle contests, whatnot. So we've seen a shift, but where the committee sometimes struggles is when people, like, for instance, want to have their wedding, and I don't just mean the vows, they want to have their wedding, reception on the beach, and it's for 100 or 100 or more people. And, we don't necessarily feel that it's really the committee's decision to make that kind of a call, because that's a large footprint. And it would be helpful to know where town board members stand on something like that. So do we want to consider codifying a cap or on that kind of activity?
Kathy, how many over 50 do you get? Or, it could be a birthday party or, not just a wedding. And if it's a wedding reception, that usually means hours and hours and hours, I guess. But there's no music on the beach. There can be no dancing, no,
Well, yeah, you can have Bluetooth speakers. We allow that. And you can't put a platform down, but you could certainly dance in the sand. So, for instance, last year we issued 94 permits for our beaches. 85 of them were, or 90% were 1 to 50. And we're seeing many of those are like under 20. And I don't know if that's a trend that's going to continue or if that was just more COVID related, because back in, say, 2018, 2019, it was more like 75% or 70% were less than 50. So, we have gotten, I guess I can use the word stricter as far as we get a lot of requests for wedding ceremonies too. And we only allow chairs for handicapped and, for disabled folks and for the elderly, because we don't want 100 chairs set up on a beach, and people want runners and, it gets, kind of crazy. So we've been, we've really reined that in, because there's a lot of requests for vows to be exchanged on our beaches, but we're always cognizant of the footprint and the ability for the public to be able to use the beach, anytime, day or night, and not feel that, oh, I can't go to the right because there's this party that's just, taking over the whole beach.
And to that effect, also, the beach is the most beautiful place out here. To be able to do that for a minor permit fee, they couldn't do that at a brick and mortar for nearly that same fee. So you're getting the best of East Hampton, we're getting the most of the conflict, and then instead of them paying a fee in the thousands of dollars, they're getting it for the minimus amount too.
Yeah, and I do think that we should limit, those types of events, and not having, large wedding receptions on the beach. It's one thing to have, the nuptials, the ceremony itself, with 100 people or so. It's relatively short. They're on and off. There's not a lot of footprint in terms of equipment and whatnot. But a reception, that's very different. And so just to sort of recap.
But it's not codified. So that's
right.
Where...
Well, that's, if I could just recap, the proposed changes that you'd like to see is that we codify the committee for 22, that we remove the deposits, and that we codify a rush fee, and then obviously the fee schedule we would want to have by resolution, not in the code itself.
Correct.
Carry in, carry out. We talked about no fireworks or balloons, fire lanterns. Does everybody agree so far that?
Yes.
So with those changes?
Yes.
The liability insurance, $2 million is pretty standard for use of properties. And I think, depending on there probably should be some discretion within the committee depending on what the event is, because you can potentially get much larger events, a marathon or something like that. You may want to have higher limits for those types of things. I mean, it seems like pretty straightforward asking for the copy of the site plan for commercial properties. In terms of other modifications, I mean, I do think it's important that we try to figure out and separate out what types of activities really aren't special, if you will, and they're recurring with regards to day-to-day business activities. Those types of things we need to look at, I think, at the peddling code and make that section of the code the one that regulates these types of activities, so that the special events committee isn't put in the position of being a de facto zoning board or whatever. So I do agree with that. Board members have any other comments or thoughts on that aspect?
So I just want to go back to what David McMaster said about maybe going back to a cap on the number of events per commercial site, which I think you alluded to, but this is actually putting a number to it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a matter of codifying that. That would be a code change as well. And then, you could apply to the special events committee to go beyond that, for instance, but, that would be discretionary, I would think.
Well, I would think that if that's committee, you would have to go to the town board for that, not the special event. I think special events committee is trying to get more out of their hands,
Right. Well, then the town board. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we already look at and have to approve any gathering permits of 250 or more, I believe.
Yes.
So, and then, in terms of submission deadlines, I mean, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Especially the larger, gatherings take a little more time. What else do we need to discuss? Anything
So
else?
I guess we can have, the town attorney's office, David and John, go back and take a look at the peddling code and see if that was something that we could get in place for this year. So what the committee was looking for is that the recommendations that we're making for 2022 was more low-hanging fruit that we can, get in place right now. As far as, the broader discussion for commercial properties, if we were to set limits and things like that. And also for back to the vendors on the beaches, I think for 2022, we're still going to look to use the special event permit process to do surf instruction and paddleboard and kayak rental. But then, this is a broader discussion that, we want this in place for 2023. Because I just don't think, for instance, commercial properties, putting a limit, I'm sure right now are folks that are, many times it's the hotels that are, using their property for weddings and things. They've already, booked it. Probably, the invitations are already printed. I mean, I don't see it happening for this season, but I think it's something that it's a conversation we have to have now so that everybody's on notice for next year.
Well, Kathy, we could always make the effective date, depending on when it's ready to go, 4 months out or something.
My only concern is that we're going to get a lot of public comment on this. And I'm afraid that if we hold up the things that we can really change now, that we're going to lose all of that in order to try to find.
I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think you can do that on more than one track. And, we got a solid 3 months till Labor Day. So,
well, the thing is, though, if you look at the schedule, like if we had a public hearing on March 3rd, with the way, transcripts have to be posted or whatnot, it couldn't go into effect till beginning of April, and then the code goes into effect, beginning of May. My concern is that, folks are going to start putting applications in now, if they think that they're going to lose that opportunity this year to try to get, kind of grandfathered in before the code changes. And I just know for, when we've tried to tackle these types of areas before with town code changes, there's a lot of public comment, and the process can take longer than you initially anticipate.
The sooner we start, the sooner we finish. But I appreciate your concern about, making code amendments that impact people who've already planned. But I think we can accommodate that. Any other comments or questions about this topic before we move on? Kathy, I want to thank you and the committee, all the hard work you've put in, and these recommendations and the amount of time spent. This is very helpful.
I'm just going to go. I'm not confident that we're going to be able to get the code amended in time for the season if we try to bundle everything into this one code change.
I don't think you bundle it all into one code change. I mean, like you said, there's some very low-hanging fruit.
Right, and that's what I'm hoping we can. I'm getting the impression we want.
And you talked about codifying the committee, and then you talked about modifications of the committee for this year. That's one thing, and then another thing is moving some of these activities into and addressing the peddling code and the private commercial properties.
Right.
To me, that's another bucket.
Right. And I got the impression, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, was that you were looking for us to do all of it for this year, for this season.
I don't see why we can't begin all of that. I'm not sure about, I have some similar concerns to you about the timing of how that goes. We'll have to see how that goes.
Okay. Well, the committee meets
But, some of these things we knew about at the beginning of last season, and, time to get it done. So
I think the idea of putting in effective as-of dates would be very helpful on some of this the more broad legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. We always have that as an option.
I would just prepare everything to run on parallel tracks, but if we had to pull one off of the track to make sure that, the primary stuff to get ready for the summer season is moving forward, we can do that then too.
Yep, I agree with David.
Yeah, I've already gotten my text message so far.
And the committee meets tomorrow, so we'll have a chance to discuss all this.
Okay.
Thanks again, Kathy. Thanks, Chief Tim Treadwell. Everyone else who's tuned in for this section, appreciate your contributions. And let's move on to restriction of smoking on the beach near lifeguarded areas. Since we're already on the beach talking about many things.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know John Rooney, Tim Treadwell, and Chief Sarlo, if you want to stay on just for giggles. Just joking. The town's beach advisory committee, we did make a recommendation to the town board, a list of recommendations, and one of them would be about banning smoking in all forms. That would be tobacco, vaping, and marijuana use at a certain distance to be determined from lifeguarded protected areas during lifeguarded protected hours. During that discussion, I think I met with approval to research this idea a little bit further and to come up with what different specific boundaries might be for the board to review to see where we want to potentially move forward with what type of boundary marker we would be to get the greatest result possible. Again, remember smoking. We're seeing a tremendous amount more of smoking of marijuana on the beaches, at our public bathing beaches. There's a lot of children and families, and this is where the discussion came up right now. Again, this will be specifically for lifeguarded areas only, and for lifeguarded hours only then too. And then I'll create the code or the draft legislation based on what the board might want to see. So for this, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna, I put the charts that are up online, and also I circulated to the board just on a quick little PowerPoint. It's all only just the charts. I'll just scroll through them if you don't mind. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my my screen. If you don't mind, once I get this email out of here.
David, while you're setting that up, pertains to all forms of smoking, nicotine, cigarettes as well?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
So can we just confirm that this is coming up?
Yes.
So the Chief Lifeguard, John Ryan Jr., made up some charts for us, putting in areas in which we have lifeguarded stands, in which then there will be different buffer lines, either by 100 foot, which would be in the blue, yellow will be 250, orange will be 500 feet. By the permitting, it goes by yards as far as the bathable area. So I don't know if we want to do yards by feet or feet, but what we did here is at the Ditch Plain Beach, for example, the green area where my scrolling line is, that's where we have two stands there at times, and they're pretty predictably in this location depending on erosion. Again, the blue areas would be 100 feet outside of the guarded area, yellow would be 250 outside of the guarded area, and then 500 feet. I'm just going to keep scrolling down. Atlantic Avenue typically has 2 guarded stands at its maximum in these locations here. Again, this is how it's set up to the 500 feet. Now, 500 feet is also where it's already in the code for dog leash and control laws also, so it could match that too. Indian Wells Beach, again, their lifeguard stands are a little bit more straight out in front of the road in there. Again, blue area, yellow area, 250, orange, the greater distance on there would be 500 feet from the typical boundary areas of the typical bathing protected zone. When we started getting into downtown Montauk, there's more overlays of our guarded beaches. This would be the area by South Edison. We typically have one stand there. This one over here, closer to Essex, we have another stand in this location, and this would be the crossover. Again, majority of the area, even under the 250 or 100 feet, in between those stands would be no smoking. If we went up to 500 feet, it would encapsulate an area further to the east of the stand that is off of, it's traditionally just placed a little bit east of the South Edison location. Next would be Kirk Park, east and west. This would be the west area, which is pretty much directly behind the comfort station. They typically put another stand at this crossover or in this area in South Edison. And again, it shows the areas then where it'd be 100 feet, 250 the yellows, and a 500-foot overlap. If we look at just these two together, you could see primarily if we did the 250, it would cover the majority of all downtown Montauk. If we did the 550, it would cover it all also in that location. We do also have bathing beaches on the Bayside. We have currently 3 of them right now. This would be East Lake or Gin Beach on there. You see the comfort station in the bottom here. Traditionally, we have one stand there. And again, it would show the demarcations of 100 feet, 250, and a 500-foot range. This sign right here, I think this fence here, or it might be a snow fence, might be the delineation of the Suffolk County Park area also, where sometimes there might be, it's in this area, so we would have to make sure check on that. But again, I just want to delineate the lines for you. Other location would be Maidstone Park. Again, you'll see the comfort station at the bottom here. Again, this is where the traditional stand is, 100, 250, or 500 feet. And Albert's Landing also, which is traditionally one stand here. Again, it's a little bit of an older picture because we have removed this groin area here. And 100, 250, and then a 500 foot distance from Albert's Landing. Does anyone want to see these again, or can I take it?
I don't need to see them again. Thanks, David.
You got it.
Very helpful. I mean, when I look at it, the 100 feet maybe looks a little short.
Yeah.
To me, but the 250 seems a little long.
Mm.
So, I mean, there are other numbers we could choose in between 100 and 250. But I'll defer to the board on that.
But if I could just finish off one last thing, Peter, on there is that, again, since this is, Ken will be a change to Chapter 91, we would have to do this also in coordination with the town trustees on there. And again, this is something that was a recommendation of the group. But yeah, that's the next option would be. And again, up to the board for discussing on distances. The one other thought that Chief Ryan wanted me to discuss, would this extend also to the parking areas? It's something that he would want and recommend, but I'll leave that also up for discussion.
So David, I have a question. If this would also, like in Maidstone, extend to the pavilion area and the picnic areas on Alberts, where the tables are set up?
So that's what I was sort of just trying to get into. Right now, we were looking at the sand only on it, and distances on the sand that might be from the toe of the dune to the watermark, and then east or west or north or south from there. So it didn't encapsulate the parking areas or any of the restroom facilities or the pavilions. No, this is mostly just on the sand. We can look at that, but right now this is just for the sand.
Thanks. So I believe for me, no smoking of anything or vaping of anything on the sand is something we should consider strongly. I'm in favor of it, and I defer to the 100 foot seems too short, as Peter said, and in your head before you look at it, you're like, oh, 500 feet sounds good, but perhaps that is a little onerous.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of like a football field, the 50-yard line would be far enough away.
That brings it interesting because then it's 100 yards, and that's what another option is, to go with 100 yards instead of 100 feet.
But 50-yard line would seem far enough away to me. So, I mean, that's 150 feet, right?
Okay, that's a good reference.
Just trying to visualize it. And, honestly, just, it's not that much fun sitting downwind at the beach. You're breathing that beautiful sea air, and then somebody lights up a cigar upwind of you. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but that's just like the worst.
And I think one of the conflict areas that we were seeing last year was in the ditch plain area, also with forms of smoking of marijuana or such, and since all those areas get used really well, and actually have our beach vendors at trying to find a balance that would protect the most influential, being the kids under 18. It's where I'm sort of putting my lens to right now also, so.
And then would this get demarcated during lifeguarded hours? They'd put a stake in the ground, a little flag saying no smoking within this area or something like that.
That's yes, I think that's most appropriate. I know I know we are looking to redo our beach signs. We can also demarcate them. I think there's also some signs at locations for where you could do your leash law and we can put that onto the back of the beach. Behind our travel lanes. Tim, do you think that's appropriate also?
Sorry, I apologize. I was a little slow on the unmute there. Yeah, I think that would be appropriate if, because I know, David, that you're working very hard, and I agree with you, to reduce the amount of signs on the beach, since we have some sort of sign pollution. if it was possible, and we found that the dog restricted area would be similar to what you would want from the smoking restricted area, then you would be able to use the same posts if you wanted it to be longer. But those are fairly unobtrusive. You don't really know what those posts are. In the village, they actually have a post that says, no dogs beyond this area. Our posts are, there's posts at Indian Wells for the drinking regulation that was created for there. But at other beaches, there are no real posts for the dogs except the property owners down at Atlantic Drive, the White Sands area. They put posts in so that they know where the dogs are allowed and not allowed. So, that would be up to how highly visible you would want it to be, I suppose.
Tim, do you recall what the distance is at Indian Wells for in the no alcohol zone?
I think it's 1,000 feet.
I think Sylvia is correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is the distance, Tim, for no dogs?
500 in either direction of the road end. So that might be a little short, maybe.
That's different than the guarded area.
Yeah, the guarded area could be shifted one way or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That would be
so it's going to be a little difficult to coordinate those distances, I think, unless you're going to go really extreme on the smoking.
I agree.
I mean, from my
500 feet, 1,000 feet, that's far, but
from my perspective, I'd probably do 500 or 1,000. For the one of the reasons is I think cigarette butts are the most prolific thing found as trash on beaches. Mm-hmm. So I would like to eliminate those. Instead, they contain all kinds of toxins in those cigarette butts. They're not good for wildlife. Our birds pick them up and try to eat them. So, I mean, just from that perspective, I would go further away, and I think it's a good thing for educating folks on how to use our beaches.
I agree.
Anybody else?
I would also agree to start it at 500 feet. The number is the section.
Okay, I see all the heads nodding. All right, that looks like consensus. 500 feet. I think we have a number.
If it gets pulled back, we can look at it. But again, for the first time, I can write that into the code. We see how it's enacted for this year. We get the signs ready, the demarcation lines, get law enforcement ready for it. We'll have to take this to a public hearing, and we'll also what I'll do is I'll contact Francis Pock, trustee of the clerk of the trustees, to see how his board looks on this potential regulation also then too. But those will be my steps moving forward since we've discussed it here, and I'll bring it back to the board. And again, just as Kathy had mentioned before, we'll be looking to move this pretty good to get it to a public hearing if we want to go that way some point in March, so we are ready to enforce it by the end of April.
And you'll extend it to the parking lot, because I think it should be extended to the parking lot. I don't think, if lifeguarded times, if the families are going through there, I don't think that, you should be able to vape in the parking lot, but you can't vape on the beach.
Yeah, because that might drive people to do it in the parking lot.
Okay, so I will.
Everybody be vaping in the parking lot. I'm sorry.
So let me just, I'll work with our staff, our legal staff and our enforcement staff to make sure there's no requirements or any hindrances for adding that. But let me work this through now that I have those numbers and the requests of the board, and I'll bring it right back to you as ASAP.
Great, thanks, David.
Great, thank you.
And you're on for the next topic.
I am. John Rooney, thank you very much also.
Chief, can you stick for just a minute?
Sure.
Since we're talking about traffic flow and whatnot.
Yep. Yeah, no problem.
And Tim, if you need to take off, thanks very much. Good to see you here. Appreciate your input.
And let me just, I don't know if Steve is in the waiting room at all.
Jason, there he is.
I just added Steve.
Excellent. Thank you.
Is that Matt today, or who do we have?
Yeah, I stepped in for Jason. Hey guys, how you doing?
Thank you, Matt.
Good, how are you?
Hey, Matt.
So I know Steve Lynch, who is our superintendent of highways, is joining in right now. Before I even get into this proposal, I want to say thank you very much publicly to Steve Lynch and his staff, who tirelessly worked through one of the largest blizzards that we had. Chief Sarlo, it goes the same to yourself and your staff also, in protecting during a state of an emergency our residents right now, to get the roads plowed, get the kids back to school, thankfully, and to do it safely in those conditions to both your departments. Well done.
I know you're relieved to get those kids back to school, David.
Yes, sir.
I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah, we there was enough Peppa Pig going on in my house. Other things.
Yeah,
all good.
I was going to cover that in my liaison report, but yeah, we certainly appreciate Steve and the chief and Bruce Bates, emergency preparedness, and everybody pulled together to get us through. A lot of snow out there.
That's right. Steve, are you on with us, Steve?
Still, it says connecting, so I don't know if he's having a problem.
He might be out on the road.
All right, let me just try to catch him, and if not, I'll just move it forward. Give me one moment.
He's on it. I put him in the room. It just nothing's coming up. I don't know if he knows that he's in.
Oh.
Well, if you'd like to wait for him, we could move on to the next topic and jump back. I'll leave it to you, David.
He's jumping on right now.
Okay.
I hope. So, Steve, we had him.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, there he is. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Okay, how you doing?
Good.
Doing well. Thanks again for all your hard work and all the dedicated workers clearing snow this week. And this is a major storm, and we appreciate all you've done.
Yeah, it was, the guys did a great job.
You don't have any gals plowing?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so the guys and gals. Yeah,
that's right.
I thought you did. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Steve. I'm going to just share a slide or a chart that was on the town's website for us. And can everyone see this? And Steve, just to let you know, it is the May 2021 chart that shows a potential trial run for new traffic patterns.
Yes.
Last year, Steve had contacted me about looking at an approach to try to calm some of the traffic patterns, but also look at some of the historical ways that people have traversed this area on the old wagon roads. There's negative 45-degree angle intersections. A lot of people don't use blinkers and such. And we were interested in seeing about the board, and Steve will get into a little further, about changing the traffic pattern to make this stretch of Stephen Hand's Path one way, which will be coming up from Stephen Hand's Path down from the Long Lane intersection to past Cedar Street one way. The traffic then would have to go up Cedar Street, make the left down Northwest Road by where the new substation is to flow through. Because of backups, a lot of individuals have been doing that recently over the last decade and such. Again, this would be a major change, potential change to a major intersection in the town, if we want to say it, our township. But we would be interested in doing this for a trial run. I'll let Steve get into more of the justifications in just a little bit. But the trial run, we can pick a certain amount of time, potentially 1 month, to see what the residents' reactions are. We can do it through Steve's allowances for his detours in the state code. We could also set up a survey in which we either had QR codes on a sign on the side of the road, or we could put it out. People can contact the town's website and take a survey of individuals on what they thought about the intersections, and just, again, visually see how the traffic patterns flow. Again, it's something Steve brought to me, and I'll let Steve talk on it a little bit more.
Thanks, David.
Well, whole idea is to make it safer, because when you come to that, if you, the way it is right now, you really can't see up or look west to see what's coming because of the angle of the thing. So by going around the other way and coming out by the substation, it makes it a lot safer. Right? And then you don't have that congestion at the intersection of Stephen Hands and Cedar Street. It will cut that because it will just flow right through, because there, if I'm correct, Mike, there's been quite a few accidents there.
Yeah, that's a problematic intersection, no doubt.
Right, so I think by lightening the traffic up there, it will make it safer if everything just flowed right through and there'd be no left turns onto there.
I guess that's the only part that I had a question about, Steve, because I'm trying to understand why there would be no left turn from Stephen Hands onto Cedar.
No, that's the left turn on Cedar onto Stephen Hands.
Yeah.
You can come out, you can make a left turn.
Got it. I got that.
The way it looks on the map, it looks like it's.
I couldn't understand why you. So you're going to end up actually having the ability to go 3 different directions from Stephen Hands as you head towards Cedar. You can take a left onto Cedar, or right onto Cedar, or go straight there, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Are you going to have? You're going to have 2 lanes there, so you have like a left turn lane and a straight turn right lane.
Yep, you can have a turning lane there, so you could, either turn left, go straight. So you could have 2 lanes because the road is wide enough.
I'm sure people will turn onto Stephen Hands and go, "Oh wait, I need to go the other way," and they're going to be down.
Yeah.
I was a little confused by that graphic.
Yeah.
So the left turn is no left turn onto Stephen Hands from Cedar as you're going.
Yes. That's correct.
So this is an area I drive all the time. When I'm coming home on Cedar Street, I can tell you that depending on the time of day or time of year, I often pass Stephen Hands and go up to Old Northwest and make that left where the yellow line is, because it's a lot safer and you don't have to wait because Stephen Hands backs up quite a ways because it's a difficult intersection to see. A lot of the traffic's turning on to Stephen Hands from, continuing on Stephen Hands, I guess. They veer right on Stephen Hands versus left. There's not that much traffic that goes left most of the time. So there's going to be less delay, I think, for people pulling on.
And you notice all the trucks go that way now.
Right.
They go past and they turn to the
line of
substation.
sight too.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, you're at a perpendicular angle and you can see the traffic coming from Old Northwest. So normally you don't do like temporary traffic patterns because that's a little tricky flipping back and forth, right? But
but we'll do it with detours.
Yeah.
And so it shouldn't be as confusing.
So
because they don't know.
So if I understand it correctly, you would make it a temporary detour just to see how it goes. And if it goes well, then you just would make it permanent and have the appropriate signage.
Yes. Then we'd have to do, put it to the state, and get a resolution, have a hearing, do a resolution, send it to the state, get it approved, and then do it.
Chief, do you have any concerns?
Yeah, well,
you've had any time to look at this?
I have. I think it takes the right steps to making a safety improvement, but I just have some concerns that, what are the effects, the other effects of doing this? My concern would be that the flow of traffic going up Cedar Street, not stopping at Stephen Hands, but going all the way up would make it almost impossible to get out of Stephen Hands coming from Northwest onto Cedar Street. In other words, they wouldn't be slowing down, they wouldn't be slowing to make a turn, and they'd be cruising right past that intersection. And I think given the speed and the volume, I think it would just make it really hard to get out there. And, I also concern with people starting to now go use Old Northwest to avoid Stephen Hands as they come out of the Northwest Woods area. You're going to have a very high volume of traffic on Old Northwest Road flowing through that
intersection. It's just, it's an improvement, and I think it's a good idea, and it has some positives. I just don't know if it actually creates a better flow for the service industry and the residents of Northwest, and creates a safer pattern through the whole area. I'm just concerned. I don't have a, I like a lot of the principles of the idea, and I know what we're trying to do. I just think that this is such a heavy, high volumed area that we may be making other problems by trying to.
What if you just temporarily did a detour at Old Northwest and just close that section down between Cedar and Stephen Hands, and then all traffic has to go to Cedar, make a left, right, or straight. You have a four-way stop.
Wow.
I don't know if that's better or not, but
I could just say, when I'm heading west on Cedar Street, I go to the Old Northwest Road, and you where the yellow line is, you can't pull all the way up, right? So there's going to have to be cars in the queue where you have to brake for that road to come in.
Correct.
So it almost made me have a flashback of what it's like over at the intersection in Amagansett by the train station, where you can't pull all the way up because cars could be making a left off of Montauk Highway, and you've got that gap. So my concern is that we're creating an issue where there may not be one, and that's at the intersection of Cedar and Old Northwest Road.
Yeah, that triangle area there, you're going to get, if you get more than about 2 to 3 cars.
Yeah, I think two.
The next car in queue waiting to pull up into the stop sign area, especially on summer weekends and during rush hour times, is going to block the southbound lane on Cedar Street coming from Old Northwest. And I'm concerned about accidents and dodging, sight lines there as well. I like the principle of this. I like some of the ideas. I understand the improvement of the dangerous intersection, but I think we're kind of shuffling problems around here. That's my concern.
Yeah. Well, if you get rid of.
What about a four-way stop?
If you add the four-way stop on Cedar and you just didn't use Old Northwest, you get rid of those angled streets altogether.
But do we have the traffic data? I mean, do we have traffic counts for this area? And did we pull the accident reports for this area?
I did not have time to pull the historical data, but I do know that we get a couple accidents a year there that are pretty bad. We get someone goes to make that left turn from Cedar Street while someone's trying to scoot across the intersection, and we end up having a T-bone, or it's a dangerous intersection. There is no doubt. And the real struggle too is if you go down Stephen Hands and you get to that intersection and you're trying to merge with Old Northwest, a lot of people don't use their blinkers as they're coming, and you're sitting there waiting to find a safe time to pull out. And that's why more and more people have gone up and used the Old Northwest section, because you don't have to wait and try to get your sight angle. I don't know if there's a way to take that intersection and bring it up to a full 90-degree angle, or, I'm not sure. It's just that it's a struggle of a location that wasn't designed to handle the volume of traffic it has right now. That's,
Yeah, I was one of those accidents turning on from Stephen Hand's path onto Cedar. I got rear-ended because it was 4th of July weekend, and there was a very long line all the way back down Stephen Hand's path. And people get impatient, and then when you pull up, because it's stopped, each car has to stop and stop and stop repeatedly. When you get to the stop sign, to stop so you can look, because there's no sight line from the left there. Yep. I got hit from behind and pushed out into the intersection. I was just lucky that the other car didn't get me as well. So I go to Northwest both ways now.
So the town owns that entire triangle of land that's encompassed by Stephen Hand's Old Northwest and Cedar Street.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe there's an opportunity to square those off as well.
Or we could incorporate it into the work that we're going to do on Cedar Street, on Stephen Hands with the drainage and everything. We could incorporate it all into one job, and maybe there's a way, we get a design to square that so it's a 90-degree turn instead of, 160.
Yeah, I guess we just have to look to see how the town acquired that property.
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah, I think that's the next step on that property, whatever status of it is. But as Steve mentioned, there is public hearings upcoming and such about the intersection of 114 and Stephen Hand's Path. Based on their data right now, nearly 7,000 people use that intersection a day. So you can only imagine, and I think they're doing even a traffic flow out of there right now. I saw some rumple strips over there, but it's in the thousands that go through this intersection. So the main question is that, as Steve is requesting, is this a way that we can do without changing infrastructure for a trial period to see what the results might be? Not do it during the height of the season on there. See where, I've already gotten, as Chief just mentioned, I got an email last night about the same thing from people coming from Northwest. We'll hear from the public pretty quickly if we give them an avenue to contact us. And I think that is part of any trial period we might do is, do that survey or a way that they can quickly go onto the website and we'll hear it, and how we make the change.
I just have to, my only reservation, I think it's a good idea and it's a good test, and we have to try to do something. My bigger picture concern, and anytime you do a trial like that with a one-way street, would be a nighttime head-on collision when someone just blows through there, doesn't see very well at night, can't really make out all the signs, is used to doing the same thing they always do, or God forbid is a drunk driver, and just bangs a left down that, and the person has no chance. And that's just, anytime you do a temporary one-way, those are the concerns that I have from a safety perspective.
Understood.
With that said, I think I would be more apt to have an engineer look at this and redesign that area than try to do a 1 month test. And I do have a question for Steve. Steve, that portion where it was proposed to be a one-way of Stephen Hand's Path, that looks newly paved and the fog lines never went in. Is there, and it's come up in my East Hampton CAC.
Yeah, we were just waiting to see what we were going to do there because once you put lines on there, and if you did change traffic, they're very hard to cover up.
Got it. Okay, so that was purposeful that you held off.
Yes.
The line down.
Yep.
Okay, good to know.
That's
Thank
correct.
you.
Any other questions, comments on this?
Well, as I mentioned, just this again, if we want to move forward on this, we have some time. If we don't, we have some time, obviously time.
More time.
We have more time. But based on the conversation here, please just think about it. Look at it as you drive it. I know we'll probably get some comments upcoming also. But let's see, and then we'll make the decision. Again, everything here that Steve has put forward, the chief is discussing, myself, it's all in the name of public safety. Public traffic safety, that's exactly what we're here for. Again, we're the first time in my lifetime here, 6 years, I guess, that anyone's looking to try to correct some of these horse and carriage roads that we hear that are just, as Chief mentioned, aren't designed for the volume of traffic. I think we could all agree to that. So that's what we had today, and I appreciate the discussion, and we'll continue talking about it as we go forward.
Can I give you one more thing to think about?
Of course.
The intersection of Two Holes, Long Lane, and Stephen Hand's. I think that's even a worse intersection.
That's my favorite intersection, Steve.
I agree, Steve.
That's how you close your eyes and hold on and hope.
I agree, Steve.
Yeah.
So I would love to go back to talking about the roundabout there. I know in Energy Sustainability Committee has also been talking about roundabouts as a much better use of fossil fuels if you're, because you don't have to slow down and stop and then speed up a little and stop, and so it's useful. And I think we can make a roundabout look as country as possible, and it's also safer to have roundabouts. We just did a thing with Ray Tobias from at the Wayne Scott Hamlet Working Group talking about roundabouts, and they are safer. So I would love to go back and look at that. Steve, if you're up to looking for a roundabout, that would be a perfect location.
Yeah, that's I think McLean already did a little bit of work on that.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
And we surveyed it.
So
we have the room for it.
Yeah, we have the room for it there.
I've received numerous emails from people, citizens, residents, visitors about that intersection. And I know how dangerous it is because I drive it every day. Poor line of sight. And, I've noticed that the traffic volume has gotten to the point now where it can actually back up all the way to that intersection from 114. So I think part of the consideration for a traffic circle there should include significantly long right turn lane as you approach 114 on Stephen Hand's path. That there should be.
Yeah, we're doing that. Yep.
Hopefully that'll be long enough to absorb that traffic, because I think if you have traffic backs up from the light to a circle, that's going to cause gridlock in a circle, and that can be problematic too.
I also, as far as the rural look of it, I mean, the first time I encountered the most roundabouts was crossing Ireland in the most rural of areas, where it's either a roundabout and 5 feet down there's a herd of cows crossing the road. So yeah. I think they perfectly fit in with the rural area. That's where I live.
You go up to New England, they're all over the place. That's what they use, and they do look nice, country-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Better than a stoplight.
Yeah, just that when we first started discussing this one, we also felt it would help calm that whole area, because it just creates a better flow moving past up into the area we started this discussion with. So I think it's a calming effect on the whole area, and I think it's just good. It would make the whole flow coming into town and using that section safer for everyone. It reminds me a lot of the section up in the back roads in Sagaponack. There's that very small, tight, I forget the name of the roads that come together there up by Scuttle Hole and I don't know if it's Butter Lane.
Oh, Millstone, Snake Hollow. Yep.
It's small and it keeps everything moving. There's never more than 2 or 3 cars waiting to get in or out of that circle, and it slows everything down and keeps it moving in an orderly fashion. And I think it works great. And I think that would be almost the exact same thing we'd have there.
Right.
So
because that road, Stephen Ann's path, used to be 40 miles an hour and then got knocked down to 30 miles an hour. So it's easy to do 40, 45 there, so it's good to see. It would be great to have the roundabout.
So what do we need to do to move that along? Because I think that
let me do this here. If you don't, oh, sorry, Peter, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
Oh, quite all right. Go ahead.
Well, there already is a major action happening at 114 in Stephen Hand's path. I've been reporting on it, working with Steve, the DOT, and such. And part of that is the towns need to, for public safety, for the drainage there, install a lot of drainage because it habitually floods to a point where that's dangerous. And what we can do is I'll work with Steve to see about the word I use, global approach for these intersections. And we will have an outreach to our engineers to see what they think, and then how we can potentially develop studies to look at all 3 intersections on there as one, if that's what the board would like to look at right now.
That long line 2 holes, I believe we did get some surveying done, correct, Steve? And then we did have a preliminary plan that LK McLean had put together for traffic circles.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so we basically have a plan, we have it surveyed, we know it fits. And was that a full design or was that a conceptual design?
No, that was just partial, just so we could see what it looks like, because the board wanted to see what it looked like.
Right. So next step, we need to move forward on developing a more formal plan.
Yes.
Right?
That's correct.
Does the board want to pursue that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate, and I can work with Steve on it, because the timing of it right now to work within the state's project to coordinate would be best to coordinate.
Yeah, I think it's important that the state understand that this is something that we want to pursue, and how that affects and coordinates with what they're doing at 114 is important, especially that turn lane.
Yeah,
that turn lane is going to be a lot longer because it doesn't work the way it is right now.
and hopefully flat.
He's chattering.
Well, everyone, I want to thank you very much for the discussion here. Some other things have come out of it, and I'll continue to work with Steve and Chief Sarlo and bring more back to the board based on some of our comments here, and there's more to come. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Okay, have a good day.
Thanks,
Bye.
Steve.
Okay, that brings us up to our last agenda item, which is temporary license agreement for Carl Fisher House. And I'll just give a couple intro remarks, David, if that's okay. Carl Fisher House, which is recently acquired by the town, listed as a historic landmark in Montauk, is a rather large property and of significance to the history of Montauk, particularly in the town of East Hampton. And we have envisioned having an ongoing agreement with the Montauk Historical Society to manage and operate this property. And as part of that, Montauk Historical is very interested and anxious to work out an agreement with us. This would be a temporary agreement, which we think is important because of the nature of the property. It does need some supervision and on-site care. And I believe we have Scott has just joined us, Scott Wilson. David, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
No, I think you hit all the pertinent points perfectly there. Again, we designate as an historical structure. The Montauk Historical Society has been eager to work with the town as they have at Second House through a different license agreement, and then also with the ownership of the Montauk Lighthouse to tell the history of Montauk. Part about doing so right now is going through the exact process that we do with other licenses, through the Property Management Committee, which Peter leads on to, develop management plans. But this temporary agreement would allow for the Historical Society to enter the facility, pay for the maintenance, heat, and such, as they continue to develop the management plan, and they can start then just working on designs of their of what they might want to do for their displays, artifact displays, to potentially get ready for our opening for the summer season. And it was a way just to get ahead of that and still stay within the process. Scott, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, well, we took a look at all the pertinent information that we have. We reviewed the law. We reviewed the Opinions Bureau opinions. We reviewed other agreements between the town of Southampton and their historic properties. And we recently reviewed some additional information from Fred Thiel with regard to use. And so, this license agreement and by extension, the availability of the annex to actually house an employee on the property is perfectly appropriate. I mean, the whole thing about historic properties is, and their ultimate uses, we're trying to basically marry historic uses with current uses. And so when the law was actually first crafted, the only user group at that time that was contemplated was a historical society. So I'm grateful that, Montauk Historical Society is willing to participate with us, sort of partner with the town to take over responsibility of this property. And so that's wonderful. And in doing so, having a staff member on site to keep their eye on a building that has had an issue already since we acquired it with the heat, have somebody on site ensuring that all the mechanicals are working properly so we don't have a bigger problem moving into the future. So I think everything that they have proposed currently in the license agreement is perfectly appropriate and welcome, frankly.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. The Town Property Management Committee did look at this temporary agreement, and they felt that it should be extended out from the initial proposed time. It's currently listed as a 120-day agreement, and this should be a sufficient amount of time to work towards finalizing a permanent agreement. Yeah, I do think that it's an important aspect that a historical society caretaker can be on site here to oversee and manage this property. It's a very large property, somewhat isolated property, and requires care, especially during the winter time, to make sure the pipes don't freeze and that the heating system's functioning properly. So we did have an opinion, I think, rendered by Assemblyman Fred Thiel, stating that this is acceptable practice on the property, given the historic nature, whatnot. I believe town board members have had an opportunity to review this agreement. We did get a letter from Dennis Fabizak, who's the chair of the town property committee, recommending that we approve this agreement as well. So,
I have a question about section 7.03. Montauk Historical Society shall not permit any waste of the premises. What is that supposed to mean?
Any waste or permit any nuisance to exist.
I get the nuisance part. Permit any waste of the
Waste is essentially saying not to do anything that diminishes the value or the importance of the property in any way, not to damage the property.
Is there a better way to say it? Because
it's kind of a term of art in a lot of legal documents, but you can, add something different if you wanted. Because if it's not going to be clear to everybody, then there might be somebody that.
I thought it was a typo or there were words missing. It just.
Yeah, no, it's kind of
a art. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but no, we could certainly elaborate on that so it's clear as to how that applies.
Well, I thought the intent was clear enough there, but if you'd like to see some additional verbiage there, Kathy, I'm fine with that.
Myself, besides everything else that was discussed, and now that we've had outreach with Assemblyman Thiel and such, I'm okay as the language is provided with some of his minor amendments. I think the 120 days allows for the property management committee to do their due diligence of a management plan, and we can work with the Historical Society for longer lease terms that would benefit them as a society for grant funding and other opportunities also. It gives the Historical Society a heads up to the summer season, and also a means to overwatch the house and the buildings. So I'm supportive of it.
Yeah, and I just want to comment that that the permanent agreement should definitely have a provision to allow the public to sled on that hill right there, because that is a beloved spot for many generations of Montauk children to ride down the hill.
That might need special insurance.
Any other questions or comments?
No, I support it, and if we need additional language, I'm okay with that, and I also support the sledding as well.
Thanks, Dave.
Well, if everyone's comfortable, Peter and I will work on potentially getting a resolution on for Thursday, maybe.
Great.
Work with Scott, and again, I look forward to working with the Historical Society on this Montauk Historical Society. They've been great stewards of Second House and also of the history and protection of Montauk, and I think this is a good way forward within the intent of the law. Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Thank you, Scott. And that brings us up to liaison reports.
Great. So I wanted to start with Human Services. Everybody knows our in-person activities have been suspended for the last few weeks, but we are currently on schedule to reopen this Monday, February 7th. During the suspension, we began offering grab-and-go meals, which were 5 frozen meals that could be picked up at the center on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but you needed to call first. And those interested in that program should call 631-324 6711. The plan is to continue to offer the grab-and-go meals even when we open our nutrition program for lunch. And as always, we continue to transport seniors to doctor's appointments. Earlier in the new year, we had gotten a $40,000 grant from Suffolk County to introduce a new program of senior shopping assistance. So what I've done is I've asked Diane Patrizio to come to our work session next week so she could present the program and provide an update on some other senior programs that we'll be bringing back now that we, looking to reopen the center. The Disability Advisory Board met a couple weeks back, and we had John Rooney attend, and the bulk of the meeting, we talked about the beach mats. They were a success that we had when we had them down at Atlantic Beach. Beautiful thing is that we can pay for them with money that we've already bonded for, because they're not a one-time only use. They can be rolled up and stored and brought out again for the next season. And the committee is asking that we have the beach mats at 2 ocean beaches and 2 bay beaches for 2022. So continue at Atlantic, add Indian Wells, and consider Maidstone and Gin Beach. And the other comment was, which we did it at Atlantic Beach, was not to just have a straight line, straight path down to the water, but have it branch out maybe into like a T or a lowercase t, so that folks that are in wheelchairs can, then set up, on, one of the, perpendicular mats, so that because they really with their wheelchair can't go in the stand. So that's something that we could consider.
Kathy, I thank you very much for bringing that up, and I'll work on that immediately. And I think the design is right. Also, it allows individuals to get off to the sides of the beach, because other individuals that are not in the need of the ADA assistance will still use those mats. And I'll work on that immediately to get ready for summer.
Great, thanks, David. I attended my first Board of Commissioners meeting with the East Hampton Housing Authority. It was their organizational meeting, and they re-elected Kevin Warren chair, Joe O'Connell secretary, and Amato Ortiz treasurer. It was a great deal of focus on the 3 Mile Harbor Affordable Apartments project. They were to close on the property last week. That project is coming in at approximately $33 million. $31 million is coming from New York State. They applied to the county for a $1.75 million affordable housing loan. The town wrote a letter in support, and it was the county subcommittee approved it, and it's going to the Suffolk County Legislature. So fingers crossed that goes through. I also attended my first Board of Directors meeting for LTV. A couple of the highlights was that the board had agreed to purchase a stage, which they're going to be able to use for LTV programming as well as for outside groups. In fact, it'll be a good attraction for some bringing in new programming. Right now, all government meetings are posted on YouTube and can be viewed with subtitles in the language of the viewer's choosing. I don't know if we were all, aware of that, but that's a terrific opportunity for particularly our Spanish-speaking residents to stay informed about what's going on in local government. But what the conversation term came around to was that this is a feature that works after the meetings have already been recorded and posted on YouTube. And the question is, how can we provide this important feature in real time? So that's something that we're looking into. And then when we get to the resolution portion of our program, I'm going to be offering a resolution to extend LTV's agreement with the town for another 5 years. And that's what I have for today.
I'll move next. My town board liaison report today. We have February 6th is a comment period. This is for the fisheries, a comment period deadline for proposed fishing regulations. They might affect cool water species and warm water species, some saltwater, freshwater species. please contact the DEC in Albany, or you can email regulations.fish@dec.ny.gov for further information. But again, comments are going to be accepted through February 6th of 2022. I got this in one of our emails, and I know we did it here in the town, but I wanted to alert everyone, along with Sylvia, her and I discussed this, is that New York State now is effective for January 1st, 2022. This is the expanded polystyrene foam containers and loose fill packing. There's a total ban in New York State. Sylvia, you were the forefront of bringing that to the town board, and the town moved on it, and now the state has done it again. It's always nice to know when East Hampton is the leader for the state, so I thank you again, Sylvia. And again, just to let anyone in the industry know about that, in the affected businesses, they could also contact the state at on.ny.gov/foam-free New York for further information. 2 weeks ago, I know last time more than 2 weeks ago, last time we met, that we had a long meeting. I had a meeting with department heads, and my department head this time was with John Barley-Dunn from Aquaculture. They're currently working on a lecture presentation schedule for the Aquaculture Department, part of their outreach. And they had the first lecture is going to be shellfish biology, broodstock conditioning and algae culture. Tentatively, this is scheduled for Thursday, March 3rd via Zoom. Might not seem a hot topic for everyone, but there is a lot of people that like it, myself. I'll get more information, or you can contact John Dunn or myself to get you the Zoom links for that. Again, it's a great public outreach. Also, it is time to submit your applications for this year's oyster gardening program. The program has been quite popular, and space is limited. Therefore, we can't guarantee a space, but please get your application in to get you in there. And we are trying to make a hard deadline by the end of this week to have those applications back in. So reminds me to get mine in for this week. I got an oyster growing partner. I believe, Peter, you do it also. And again, Farley will let you know all the information, and also contact my office for more information on that. Staying with the topic of aquaculture, we want to let the board and also the public know that the Suffolk County Shellfish Aquaculture Lease Program, SCALP, they are doing a meeting on February 3rd via Zoom, and this is about the 2022 lease application cycle. If you have any interest, you can please contact Susan Filipowicz, the Suffolk County, or contact her at 631-853-4775. Again, it's via Zoom on February 3rd. Wanted to let everyone know from the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee that the project was at the pipe at Cove Hollow. Remember, we've gone through a lot of engineering on that. We've done scopes of it. Fortunately, we want to thank Suffolk County Water Authority. They've removed their service line that punctured the Cove Hollow stormwater pipe. They removed it last week. This is the first of 3 lines that need to be removed and repaired. National Grid has also agreed to remove and repair the damage from their service line that goes through the pipe as well. It's amazing that they can install pipes and not realize they're going through straight concrete conduiting, but they did. But I want to thank all the public utilities and entities for working well for this water quality project. I want to let everyone know I had another meeting with John Rooney, head of recreation, superintendent of recreation. One of the initiatives we're doing in the downtime right now, winter, I guess if there is downtime, is we are updating all our recreational park pages right now on our internet. We're trying to make connectivity of our signs at our parks and beaches more representative of exactly what's on our internet, telling everyone what the codes are, how you can either reserve a location, what is allowed or what is not allowed. So we are updating every single location that our Parks and Recreation Department manages. And I think that would help the public and hopefully defray some of the phone calls that individuals might get at the town, that they can go and use our website effectively. So I want to thank John and Mandy and staff for that. As far as land management, I would like to, we are zeroing in on language for an RFA, request for applications for farmers. One of the sites, multiple sites, but one site being the farm fields in Amber, Kansas, that we recently just purchased. trying to get a farmer ready for food crop production for the upcoming season. We'll get that to the town board for discussion very, very shortly also, as it is now February. And with the update about the southern pine beetle infestation in the Ned Peak stretch area, the state is working together again with the township right now. Identified over 1,200 trees that are infected that they want to fell, some chip, and they will be actively moving on that as the snow subsides and they can get access to that area. But it has become a larger infestation than we initially knew based on the aerial surveys, on-the-ground surveys. But I'm very happy to have the assistance of Assemblyman Thiel, Laura Tuman for the CCOM, and also Tom Dess with the state, and advocating to get the tree fellers here from the state as soon as possible to try to save this ecological resource and beautiful natural habitat of Ned Peak. With that, I thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful February upcoming.
Peter, you're on mute, but that's okay. I'm next, so I'll just go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you, David. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Yeah. The Community Housing Opportunity Fund is sending a letter to the town board supporting the 114 property that should receive an AHO Affordable Housing Overlay designation, and supports the Sag Harbor Trust property being added to that with an affordable housing overlay. I'll get those letters to you soon. Additionally, the committee supports amending the local AHO from single-family residences from 2 to 4 units per acre, and applauds the town board in their effort to address a critical need in the town. So I just wanted to make sure that the community heard it and that the town board heard that letter as well before getting the hard copy. The business committee also met, and I'm going to give 2 different data points. We always have Robert Ross from the Southampton Hospital on. So he also talked to us about the January 19th numbers and hospitalizations, COVID hospitalizations, and the Wednesday, the 26th of January. So the 19th of January, there were 33 COVID patients at Southampton Hospital. And as of the 26th, that number had fallen to 19. 5 are still in ICU and 1 is on a vent. January 19th at Stony Brook Hospital, there were 270 COVID patients. As of the 26th of January, that number had fallen to 150. 49, however, are still in ICU and 11 are on vents. In Eastern Long Island, I don't have the January 19th, but there are now currently 3 COVID patients in Eastern Long Island. The discussion was mostly about the outdoor dining pilot program. Working with Rick Whalen and Jeremy Samuelson and John Jelnicki, the 3 of those are going to be working together and hope to have something to the town board to consider in early March. And in light of that, Rick is asking for a little bit more time to get that pilot program, with the comments from the planning department. And so I think what I've just been emailing Paul Monty, who is the chair of that business committee. We're not going to meet tomorrow until we have that in our hand. I think we want to wait until our following meeting, which is February the 16th. Our longest discussion, however, was about the need for seasonal housing for employees. And there was a discussion that perhaps the town board could look at, again, running this through the planning department, and having and allowing in residences accessory apartments as part of our affordable housing program, but for employees, a seasonal employee. This would also be run through the community housing department, Tom Rule's department. There would be a lot of things we'd have to consider, but that seemed to help as far as the businesses that were on this meeting thought that might be something that we should consider. I think there's got to be a lot more conversation about that before we do it, but it is something I'd like to run by the planning department and Tom Rule's office to see if that would be something that would help for this coming season. They want to make sure that they're part of the 0.5% transfer tax in looking at affordable housing for employees and seasonal housing for employees. The Wainscott working group met. We had a night meeting on the 27th from 7. It lasted till about 9:30. As some of you may know, Peter Flinker with Dodson and Flinker, Lisa LeCurry with Fine Arts and Sciences, and Ray DeBias from McLean and Associates were on the call, as well as some other members of the consulting team. And there were 14 folks that were from the working group that were on. We had an introduction, and everyone introduced themselves on what their concerns were, current issues, and changes since the plan was adopted. And most notably is that the Wainscott Green is now a park, and that was part of that Hamlet study plan. And Il Molino restaurant at the other end. So we've sort of bookended the commercial district with 2 parks, which is really phenomenal. Both of those were part of the Hamlet study. The discussion included the airport, the Wainscott Commercial Center, and that planning application that is right now at the planning department and planning board. Traffic issues were a big concern. A lot of talk about parking and how to consider parking within the plan. And there was conversation about development and some overdevelopment that they don't want to see happen in that commercial area. The next meeting will be determined by a poll, and so we're waiting to see which dates are going to be working, which dates will work for the working group, and I'll let the committee know, or the town board know, if they would like to also have a Zoom link so that they can be part of it.
Sylvia, how often will that committee meet?
So the original thought was to have 4 meetings. I'm assuming that we're going to do 1 meeting a month. So we did 1 in February, we'll do 1 in March, April, and then May. And by that time, hopefully have some recommendations. Some recommendations were already considered and kind of unanimous. Was we talked about sidewalks. I mean, that's sort of the low-hanging fruit. But sidewalks connecting all parts of that commercial area from kind of park to park, and seeing, and so that was considered right away. And I think the parking issue is the next thing to kind of look at, and how parking can be addressed in a nice way, in a beautiful way, and how and then the third part was, how is traffic going to circulate? So all of those issues, and hopefully we'll have a lot of recommendations along the way, or we'll come out at the end of the 4 meetings with total package of recommendations.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Kate,
Sure.
do you have a report for us today?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Peter. The Energy Sustainability Committee met yesterday and set priorities for 2022. And moving forward on reactivating and taking a look at the Solarize program, getting the word out on education of our Solarize program, which, as you know, offers discounts for solar sign up through Energize East Hampton, and that's available through our website. They also discussed other forms of sustainability, which is addressing food waste, which is a tremendous amount of garbage created each year through food waste, through both our residential houses and through businesses, and also regenerative farming. They are working on breaking out into subcommittees that will then take care of these individual topics, and look forward to working with them in the future, and that's the Energy and Sustainability Committee. I wanted to make a note of that name. I have a resolution on today correcting it. We've been calling it, because it's so fast to say, Energy Sustainability Committee, but they are the Energy and Sustainability Committee. They also would like to address, again, the litter problems that we see across town, and how that impacts sustainability. The Spring CAC had their first meeting of the year on Tuesday evening, and at which it was an organizational meeting, and they selected their chair for 2022. That's Lauren Bulger. Their vice chair for 2022 will be Patrice Dalton. There was no one that stood up for secretary, but then a guest stood up to be secretary, and I have a resolution on welcoming her to the committee today. And again, a former committee member who's coming back, asked to come back and was cajoled to come back, I think, David Buddha. We talked about a couple of projects that are of concern in Springs, and that's the Pussy's Pond vehicular bridge, and also cleaning out the phragmites in the culvert there. To that end, I also had a meeting with Jim Peterson and Matthew Judica, who had worked on that project with Steve Lynch and Melissa Winslow, to take another look at that project, and I'll be reporting on that in the future. And also to put up a very low single rail fence across from where we did the knee work on the road on Gerard Drive, because of the erosion that was happening on the Gardener's Bayside. Now it appears that there's some driving on through the sand there, kind of coming off Gerard Drive, going around a light pole that's there, and then coming back onto the road, that's causing some erosion and some gouging there. So we're taking a look at either planting or perhaps a low rail, one single low rail fence, just to discourage that, so we can maintain that area. Also, again, they also are very concerned about litter, and also drag out on the corridor from the commercial businesses there. And to that end, there was a discussion on having a joint meeting with the East Hampton Sag Harbor CAC, since it's in their jurisdiction. And that was Spring CAC report. I met on Tuesday during the day with the CARP committee co-chairs. That's Allison Branco and Laura Tuman. And we're setting a date for the Coastal Assessment Resiliency Plan group to meet with Kim and Samantha Klein in Natural Resources, and we'll get that committee going to pursue further grants and move from the planning and study phase into implementation of those recommendations. I also met with the Waterfront Advisory Committee Friday afternoon, and we'll be working with the Waterfront Advisory Committee to update the LWRP and have that committee again meet on a regular basis. Jeremy Samuelson sat in on that meeting, and it was very helpful to have planning there as well as natural resources moving forward on that. And in general, taking another hard look at our coastal resiliency and planning for the future. I was invited and attended a meeting of the Springs Historical Society, the Springs Library at the Parker Anderson House. I got a lovely tour and was amazed at what they had there in terms of art history and the history of Springs. I encourage everyone to go to that library. There was with the snow just about threatening, it was a lovely little warm room there to sit down and read a book with great view and some views of the harbor. They also showed me the restoration work that the town has helped with on the roof, and discussed some of the ADA compliance work that's proposed to be done inside. It was a lovely meeting, and they have fascinating information there. I really encourage everyone to stop in there. And then I also have a update on the South Fork Wind Farm, which received from the Department of Works in the state a notice to proceed with construction. That has recently come in. I ask people again, if they're interested or impacted by any of the work, to go to southforkwind.com and look through all of the information there, including the virtual open house and the link to sign up for weekly construction updates. We also updated our town website to reflect the current permits, the recent notices that have come in, and links to all the areas that you can get information on the export cable construction that's going to begin. And I worked on, with the tremendous help of David Lease and Scott Wilson, for our housing initiative, a look at properties that the town owns that were perhaps purchased with municipal funds that might be suitable locations for development of more affordable housing. And again, I have to thank David for all the work that he's done on that. He has created a list that was extremely helpful on locating properties in town that have perhaps been overlooked. So I thank both of them for the hard work on that. And I had a meeting today with Andy Gates this morning before our meeting on talking about bringing together the folks from the Wildlife Management Committee in the future to meet. And that's my report.
Thanks so much, Kate. So first of all, I just want to reiterate gratitude for all of our highway workers who did such an excellent job clearing the roadways under what were really extremely difficult conditions at times, with total whiteouts and some vehicles parked in public right-of-ways or stuck out on the roads. I also want to thank the general public for heeding the call to stay off the roadways so that the crews could do the work. It's really important, especially big storms like that people not go out and drive, because it just compacts the snow and makes it much more difficult to clear and get down to the asphalt, which can lead to icier conditions later and more work for our highway crews. They worked extremely long hours. They suspended work very late at night or early in the morning on Sunday, and then began again at about 5 a.m. Again, thanks to Steve and all the highway workers, Chief Sarlo, Bruce Bates, Emergency Preparedness, for helping make sure that we were all safe and that the roadways were cleared in a very expedient way. Bless you. I want to give an update on positivity rates. That's a good segue, John. Positivity rates at town testing site at 110 Stephen Hans Path. Those numbers are going down, which is welcome news. We had the highest positivity rate on record on the week of January 3rd through 9th. It was 33.17%. The following week, it had dropped almost in half to 17.87%. The following week again, which is the 17th through the 23rd, it was down to 7%, dropped more than half. But unfortunately, it's plateaued there at 7% this past week, 24th through 30th, 7%. But because the numbers have declined and the demand for testing has significantly declined, Care One Concierge, who's is the vendor who's performing the testing at the town's location, is reducing their hours to Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for testing from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that will continue until further notice. We're also continuing to offer vaccinations, first doses, second doses, boosters, and it's really important, if you're not yet boosted, to get boosted. Those clinics are happening. We still have availability on Thursday, the 10th of February from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., on Wednesday, the 16th from 9 to 4 p.m., and on Tuesday, the 22nd of February from 4 to 8 p.m. Again, those clinics are happening at here at Town Hall. You can sign up online, go to the town website at ehamptony.gov, and you can sign up if you're looking for vaccination. Just a brief update on the airport. We've continued to meet with the FAA and have ongoing communications with them regarding closure of the airport and opening a new private use airport, just clarifying procedures and working towards full operational airport under prior permission required restrictions. We're also, we have a SECRA working group, which is developing a draft scope for a generic environmental impact statement, which will address these prior permission required restrictions that we will be putting into place. Once we have a final draft scope, we will be releasing that to the public for review and comment. The airport is scheduled to close at 11:59 p.m. on February 28th, and a new private use airport will open at 9 a.m. on March 4th. And that is my liaison report for today. I believe we have resolutions to approve, Kathy.
Yes, starting with resolution 2022-192, and this is to extend the agreement with LTV for the period of January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2026, as set forth in the initial agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried.
I'd like to offer resolution 2022-193. This is for the 2021 as a budget modification for buildings and grounds, bringing from repairs general in the amount of $5,000 to heat, the line for heat in the amount of $5,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried.
I have the next resolution. First is resolution 2022-194, which is to amend an adopted resolution, which was 2020-446, to update the fund line for Civic Plus. And it is resolved that resolution 2020-446, adopted April 7th, 2020, is amended as follows, and that the cost will be paid from IT budget lines A1680 54623 80% and B1680 54623 20%, with annual renewals to be offered at an additional 5% increase per annum, and that's for Civic Plus, which is our website.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried.
Next resolution is 2022-195, and this is the resolution I spoke of earlier to amend to correct the name of the Energy and Sustainability Committee, and this was to amend resolution 2022-51, which was adopted on January 4th, to appoint the members of the 2022 members of the Energy and Sustainability Committee, and where there was a mistake in the name, and now I offer this amendment to correct the name to the Energy and Sustainability Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried.
2022-196 is to amend resolution 2022-108, which is to authorize a contract for computer professionals for the East Hampton Justice Court. And again, whereas resolution 2022-108 authorized the contract for computer professionals, and that's the name, for the East Hampton Justice Court was adopted January 6, 2022 to authorize payment for professional services for 2022 from budget account A1110545500 from Justice Court subcontractors. And that is to amend that resolution so that the computer professionals, as described in the resolution, shall be paid from budget account A11105460, which is Justice Court maintenance of office equipment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried.
The next resolution is 2022-197, and that is to add new members to this 2022 Spring Citizen Advisory Committee. That's ID Simon and David Buddha.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried.
And my last resolution is 2022-198, and this is to authorize payment to All Language Translations LLC for the East Hampton Justice Court. And this resolution describes that the Justice Court required the services of a Spanish interpreter on September 28th, 2021. And whereas there were no Spanish interpreters available, the East Hampton Justice Court had hired All Language Translations LLC for a trial on September 28th, and it authorized payment of $170 to be paid to All Language Translations out of budget account 11110545520, which is outside professionals, and it resolves that they will be paid from that budget account in the amount of $170.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. Resolution 2022-199 is to appoint Brian Harris to the 2022 Montauk Beach Preservation Committee. Brian Harris is hereby appointed to the Montauk Beach Preservation Committee to represent Montauk Beach Property Owners Association for the 2022 calendar year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 200 is Detective Sergeant Toya training, and that is to so that Detective Sergeant Daniel Toya is authorized to attend internal affairs investigation training sponsored by IP Video Corp and True Security Design to be held remotely on February 15th in the amount not to exceed $200. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. 201 is to amend resolution 2022-186 timekeeper software, East Hampton Town Police Department 2022 resolution 2022-186 is hereby amended to provide payment and to correct the assigned budget lines for that software in the amount of $5,355 for calendar year 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 2022-202 is authorized agreement, intermunicipal agreement for animal control services with Sag Harbor Village. The town of East Hampton will provide Sag Harbor Village for an annual sum of $2,600. Animal control enforcement services within the boundaries of Sag Harbor Village, retroactive to January 1st, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 203 is 203 is LK McLean Associates Engineering Services for drainage at Stephen Hand's Path. This is to increase the fee limits, resolve the professional engineering costs. LK McLean is set forth in Resolution 2020-574 is hereby increased by $24,800 to an amount not to exceed $141,800.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. 204 is to accept performance bond and security agreement with South Fork Wind. This performance bond is in the amount of $1.5 million. And the expiration date on that is January 26, 2027.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 2022-205 is to increase the 2021 cap and budget modification town attorney. That is to increase from appropriated surplus in the amount of $91,000 to outside professional in the same amount. And that's resolved that the cap for Cooley LLP as per resolution 2021-1339 is hereby increased from $1 million to an amount not to exceed $1.1 million.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 2022-206. Authorized retention of Lisa LaCourie in Fine Arts Sun Sciences by Whiteman Osterman Hanna LLP, assistant in environmental analysis and transition of the East Hampton Airport from public use to private use and development of regulations with regard to the same. That is in the hourly rate of $108, an amount not to exceed $36,000.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. 207 is revised resolution 2022-113, authorized renewal agreement, Triberon Tritech 2020. The renewal of the agreement with Tritech, aka Central Square, for software and support services for the term of 11/15/21 through 11/14/2022. It's hereby approved at a cost to the town not to exceed $59,912.64.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pass to carry. Resolution 208 is professional filing services. Resolved that the service of Gerard Weinberg, PC, attorneys at law, is hereby retained to provide service for the service of process upon the State Secretary of State for enforcement proceedings in Town Justice Court as needed at a cost of $15 plus $10 filing fee for a total of $25 per service payable from the budget line. Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Any other resolutions to offer? I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
A motion to go into exec session for contracts and advice of counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. John, do we have any specific times listed for outside counsel?
John, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Let me check and see. I don't think so.
It's 2:20 now. Well, can we reconvene at 3 o'clock? Does that work for folks?
I'll let them know. I'll let
That's
council
fine.
know.
We can grab a bite of lunch and then reconvene at 3. Does that work?
Will we be doing any CPF? Because there was something circulating.
No, I
Okay.
see nothing on the list. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
That's
I'll
good.
send out the link. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Stay
everyone.
safe and be well, everyone.
Thanks, Matt, Jason.
All right. Thank you all. All right. It's all